Chapter 36-23. The ancestral land of the ferocious race was located in the western part of the first universe, which was called the Ferocious Star Zone. The 10,000 members of the ferocious race who were stationed on the Ferocious Star Zone at the edge of the Tianji Star Zone were only a branch of the race. In the giant ferocious star field, there were several hundred administrative planets where the giant ferocious race lived. Although this slave race couldn't compare to the powerful demon race in the first universe controlled by the Heaven's Legacy race, they weren't too weak. The news that the 10,000 members of the ferocious race who were stationed in the Tianji Star Zone had all been killed had reached the Ferocious Star Zone, the royal planet of the ferocious race. The Tianji race didn't care about the death of the 10,000 members of the branch at all. They didn't even send a message of condolence, which infuriated the royal family of the ferocious race, but they didn't dare to say anything. That race's nature of fearing the strong and bullying the weak had long been ingrained in their bones. The Tianji race was the overlord of the first universe. Even the ferocious king didn't dare to talk about the Tianji race in private in his territory. It would be a disaster if there were spies planted by the Tianji race on the ferocious star. He would never know that the Heaven's Legacy race had always believed that it was a waste to plant spies in a race with such a strong servile nature. Even so, there were still hostages among the ferocious giant tribe's royal family who were held captive in Tianji City. Every ferocious giant tribe's royal family would be asked to send the most talented ferocious giant tribe's royal uncle to Tianji City. Generation after generation, the old and the dead. There were 6 royal uncles of the ferocious race who were still alive in the hands of the Tianji race. Of the 6 royal family members of the ferocious race, 3 were at the peak of the 9th rank of the universe state, and the last one was a Star Lord. Today, the 6 powerful members of the giant ferocious royal family had all returned to the giant ferocious planet. Right now, they were in the giant ferocious royal city, discussing important matters with the giant ferocious emperor and the elders of the giant ferocious royal family. At this moment, the 6 royal uncles of the giant ferocious royal family were speaking one after another. Although the 6 royal uncles had successfully escaped from Tianji City and returned to the giant ferocious planet safely, the 6 of them had incomparably worried expressions. Everyone else in the palace was the same. The entire palace was filled with gloom. This time, we were indeed too careless. We were tricked by the devil race and were actually tricked out of the imperial prison by him. Alas, who would have thought that the demon tribe would be so powerful that they could even bribe the new young patriarch of the Tianji clan, Sha Baofeng, to participate in this conspiracy? As expected of the number 1 slave clan, their methods are too ruthless and sinister. This time, the weaker races of the ferocious race have suffered because of him. Now that the royal prison is empty, the heavenly fate race will definitely annihilate us. Unfortunately, there was no way to turn back. Even the imperial prison was blown up. Otherwise, for the sake of the entire race, this old man would have turned back. No matter who came, they wouldn't leave even if a blade was at their neck. Who could afford to offend the Heaven's Legacy race? It's too late to say anything now. Everyone, regardless of whether they were willing or not, could only escape under the circumstances at that time. Now that we've returned to the giant ferocious star, even if we go back now, it's useless. Maybe the Heaven's Legacy race is thinking about which races to pick out and exterminate. If we go back now, we'll definitely be the first ones to stand out. What should we do? What should we do? As the 6 generations of ferocious race imperial uncles said these words, the atmosphere in the entire ferocious royal palace became even more oppressive. After a while, the ferocious emperor seemed to have suddenly thought of something. He sucked in a breath of cold air and cried out involuntarily, "Not good, I'm afraid we're really in trouble this time." The real trouble isn't just the heavenly fate race, but also the fiendish races of the Second Universe Federation. A crisis is coming. Hearing this, everyone was stunned for a moment, and then they all agreed. You haven't forgotten about the great battlefield at the front of the demon domain, right? Our ferocious race also has a fleet there, and it's not small either. There are several members of the royal family guarding it. Now that such a big change has happened in Tianji City, the main fleet will most likely not go there. Anyway, Tianji City is in the central region, and there are many ancestral lands of the servant races along the way. They will be happy to see how we are dealt with. The Second Universe's alliance army is not easy to deal with. After they learn about this situation, they will know that the races of the First Universe don't have the support of the Heavenly Fate race behind them. They will definitely be like wolves and tigers. Under such circumstances, if our ferocious race's powerful fleet still stays at the front line, won't that attract hatred? Now that we have already angered Master's Heavenly Fate race, if we offend the races of the Second Universe, I'm afraid we will really be completely exterminated this time. The powerful alliance army of the Second Universe will soon arrive at the ferocious star. Don't look at how many races there are in the First Universe. There are also many powerful races like the demon race. They will definitely take the lead to form an alliance, but there's no need for us to stay at the front line and attract attention. Evacuate, we have to evacuate. At this point, the ferocious royal family members in the surrounding halls all seemed to wake up from a dream and echoed one after another. Soon, the ferocious race's secret edict to urgently recall their vanguard fleet at the front line was sent out at the first moment. It could be imagined that not long after this secret edict was sent through the First Universe's Starry Sky network to the Ferocious Legion's royal commanders at the front line, the entire Ferocious Legion, the Ferocious Legion would soon withdraw unconditionally. This scene in the Ferocious Star Emperor City was not a special case in the First Universe. In fact, many of the royal hostages of the First Universe's servant races who had been held in the hands of the Heavenly Fate race had all carried out secret negotiations with the upper echelons of their races after returning to their respective races. Although there were only a few soft-hearted races like the Ferocious race, in general, all the major races had made the decision to withdraw their vanguard fleet at the front line. This included the demon race. They were the same as most races. The reason why they made such a decision was not because they were afraid of the alliance army of the Second Universe, but because the overall situation of the First Universe had changed. Even if they wanted to form an alliance army to resist the invaders of the Second Universe, it should not be led by the Heavenly Fate race. The temporary withdrawal of the vanguard fleet of the various races was mostly to wait for the new alliance army of the First Universe to be officially established. Then, they would send out a new fleet of battleships to form a brand new alliance army of the First Universe. Chapter 36-24. Counting the time, it had only been less than half a month since Yi Xian had left the frontline battlefield of the Demon Domain. A plane-level space war like this could easily take years or even decades. Sometimes, after a regional war, the two camps would need several years to rest and reorganize. Half a month passed in the blink of an eye. Moreover, before Yi Xian left, the alliance of the two universes had just finished a great battle of the vanguard fleet. It could be said that they had suffered heavy losses, especially the alliance of the Second Universe, which had suffered heavy losses. Half a month was not even enough to rest and reorganize after the war. Therefore, since Yi Xian left, not to mention a full-scale war between the two camps, there had not even been a small-scale probing war between them. However, in half a month, both camps had basically rested and reorganized. The alliance of the First Universe was full of fighting spirit. After half a month of boredom, they were already restless and wanted to fight. Especially with the departure of Yi Xian, Yi Luo, who was originally only the deputy commander of the vanguard fleet, was promoted to the frontline and became the new commander of the alliance of the servant races of the First Universe. The commanders of the vanguard fleet of the servant races in his camp were still looking forward to a great victory. This matter was to curry favor with him. Unfortunately, the change in the situation was too unpredictable. It was simply too unexpected. In just half a day, the alliance of the servant races of the First Universe had all left. The fleets of the various races that had originally formed a long line of defense in a vast area of the starry sky were all gone in just half a day. Before Yi Luo could recover from his shock, he was separated from the alliance of the Second Universe by a few kilometers. Of the battleships confronting each other in the void, only the 10,000 or so battleships of the vanguard fleet of the Tianji clan headquarters were left. In the past 2 days, Yi Luo had been in high spirits. When he had nothing to do, he would deduce the situation of the battlefield in the flagship fortress of Expel. The feeling of controlling nearly 1,000,000 starry sky battleships under his command made him intoxicated. He would often be immersed in his deduction for most of the day. In addition, the vanguard fleet of the servant races of the first universe that had retreated one after another did not greet him. He had already fallen out with the Tianji clan, so what was there to greet? Therefore, even after all the fleets of the other races had left, Yi Luo was still in the dark. He was immersed in the deduction of the situation of the war with excitement. It was not until he was ready to order a probing attack that he realized that the void to his left and right was basically empty. The long line of defense that stretched for millions of kilometers in the void was now as if a dog gnawed on it. Yi Luo was. But, when? Then, the tens of thousands of battleships, fortresses, and fortresses of the vanguard fleet of the Tianji clan that were suspended alone in the void began to frantically retreat as if they were fleeing. In the face of this strange scene, the alliance of the various races of the second universe that was 100,000 kilometers away in the void was dead silent. Not a single battleship chased after them. In fact, half a day ago, when the fleets of the alliance of the first universe retreated one after another, they had already noticed it. At first, they did not pay much attention to it, thinking that it was just a routine adjustment of the defense line. It was not until the number of battleships in the void on the other side that the vanguard of the various races of the second universe's alliance that the alliance of the vanguard fleet finally took it seriously. However, they were certain that this was a conspiracy of the alliance of the first universe's servant races. No matter what the other party's true intentions were, it was obviously not a good thing. It was the same now. Such a huge and long line of defense in the void was completely gone in the blink of an eye. Were they trying to fool a little kid? If they advanced rashly at this time, they would be fooled. In the end, they might even fall into a trap. Even the headquarters of the myriad Luo Federation hidden in the darkness in the void far behind the enormous alliance line, as well as the upper echelons of the human race's cultivation and technology camps, were all secretive about this scene. They looked at each other, and no one dared to make a sound. They did not understand what had happened. What was the ultimate goal of the other party's strange actions? When the tens of thousands of battleships of the Tianji clan's vanguard fleet led by Yi Luo had completely left, there was not a single enemy battleship to be seen in the vast void of the universe in front of them. Then, another half a day passed. The alliance of the second universe, the myriad Luo Federation, and the human race had settled down in their respective camps. The informant inserted in the first universe continued to send the news over. Great changes in the Tianji city. Sha Baofeng, the newly appointed young clan leader, had colluded with the former clan leader of the Yin Demon clan, the Yin Emperor, and caused havoc in the Tianji city. Not only did they blow up the imperial prison in the inner city of the Tianji city, but they also released tens of thousands of slaves from the first universe who had been held hostage by the Tianji clan in the imperial prison. In this complete chaos, 9 vortexes of space turbulence appeared in the industrial area around the Tianji city. The entire star area was in chaos. This was a shocking piece of news that no one had expected. Everyone was shocked beyond words. The upper echelons of the Federation, the human race, and the vanguard fleet of the alliance of the second universe even thought that this news was fake. They thought that it was one of the baits used to confuse them and lure them into the enemy's trap. It wasn't until all the major powers communicated with each other and confirmed that all the secret channels in the hands of the major races and powers were in agreement that they suddenly realized that all of this was actually true. After all, it was reasonable and acceptable for 1 or 2 clan spies to be discovered and fake news to spread. However, if the entire Federation, the human race, the races of the second universe, and all the spies of the first universe and even the Tianji clan were all captured, then that would be absolutely unrealistic. Soon after, this news spread throughout the 3 universes. Even the Tianji clan's officials issued a joint arrest warrant for the crippled young clan leader, Sha Baofeng, and the Yin Emperor in the first universe's Starry Sky network. This matter was finally settled. It was confirmed. The commanders of the vanguard fleet of the second universe's alliance were filled with regret. They beat their chests and stamped their feet. They had missed an excellent opportunity to beat a drowning dog. Unfortunately, this kind of opportunity was fleeting. If they missed it, they would never get another chance. Chapter 36-25. When he left the Tianji star field, Yi Xian used the interstellar coordinate jump ability. The destination he chose was the black hole of life in the demon star field, which was quite far away from the Tianji star field. Ever since the Tianji race sent out a fleet to capture the Void Soldier Ladle race in the black hole of life, it had been empty. Perhaps there were some forces or races in the first universe that wanted to use the empty black hole of life. After all, this was a unique void that was equivalent to a secret realm. Although it was called a black hole, it was different from other black holes formed in the universe. It was completely made up of Void Soldier Ladle race. The Ladle race was formed by the Void Devourer beast slowly eating away at the void. Not only did it not devour light and heat, it was filled with all kinds of void turbulence and had the characteristics of a constantly expanding black hole. Instead, because of the departure of the Void Soldier Ladle race, it stopped expanding slowly and stabilized. It was definitely a good place for a race to live. Earth. However, this was the Demonkin star region after all, and the Demonkin race was ranked in the top 3 among the slave races of the first universe, even if they weren't the strongest. Therefore, some small races didn't even dare to think about the black hole of life. The Demon Cultivator race might have thought of this before, but ever since they formed an alliance with Yi Xian and found out about the relationship between him and the Void Soldier Ladle clan, the Demon Cultivator race gave up on the idea of developing a black hole of life and entering it. During this time, the black hole of life had always been quiet. It was a stark contrast to the turbulent situation in the Demon Star field and even the entire first universe. It was like a quiet and peaceful paradise. After Yi Xian completed the interstellar coordinate jump and arrived at the black hole of life, he was not in a hurry to leave. After thinking for a while, he decided to set up camp in the black hole of life for the time being. Following the unforeseen events in Tianji City, the overall situation of the first universe would obviously be greatly affected. The slaves of the first universe, who had been held hostage by the royal family of the Tianji race, had all fled. This could not help but directly affect the plane that was erupting at the edge of the Demonkin star region. A great battle in the stars. It was impossible for Yi Xian to predict how the specific situation would develop, but he had to plan ahead. Even if the general situation of the first universe had nothing to do with him, the Tianji clan would reveal the secret of his identity in a fit of anger. Yi Xian and Triumph City would be sent to the tip of the waves. Before all of this happened, he had to increase his cultivation as much as possible. Right now, he was at the 11th realm, the 8th level of the Mystic Light realm. He only needed a small breakthrough before he could consume the level 12 liquid and break through to the 12th level, the Void realm. Even if Yi Xian was only a Void rank 1, the overall combat strength he could display at that time would be completely different from what it was now. It was not like the difference between heaven and earth, but it would definitely cause people to raise their eyebrows. After all, Yi Xian still had a lot of potential in the various supreme treasures and powerful divine abilities he possessed. Their power would increase along with Yi Xian's cultivation base. Therefore, to Yi Xian, every small increase in his cultivation base was significant. It was definitely not just a small increase in his combat strength. If the outside world was chaotic, then so be it. According to Yi Xian's estimation, it would only take him 2 or 3 days to break through another small realm. After ending this round of closed-door cultivation, he would leave the black hole of life and investigate the situation of the first universe, as well as the identity of the planes of the 3 universes. The various reactions after the secret of the Void realm was revealed. As a Mystic Light realm expert, Yi Xian was no longer an ordinary Starry Sky expert. He was only 4 realms away from becoming a Universe realm expert. At this level, breaking through a small realm was no longer as easy as it was before. Ordinary people would only be able to break through once every few years. Even if Yi Xian had a huge amount of resources in his hands, it was not realistic for him to break through consecutively in just a few days. In fact, his last breakthrough was just around the corner. So, for the sake of ensuring the success of his breakthrough this time, Yi Xian had pondered for a moment before he withdrew a huge amount of cultivation resources from the undying world within his body. 10 level 9 colored stellar core quintessence. A drop of evil liquid. A huge piece of the corpse of a region lord. Of course, the latter was for roasting. The flesh and blood of such formidable primordial beings were precious cultivation resources. Even if they had perished countless years ago, they were still precious flesh and blood. So, even if a small amount of energy remained within them, it was extremely precious to Yi Xian right now. Ding! 10 level 99 colored stellar core quintessence have been discovered. Will you take them immediately? As soon as he withdrew those 10 top-grade stellar core quintessence, the familiar sound of system notifications resounded in Yi Xian's mind, and he immediately gave an affirmative answer. However, he didn't utilize the energy of those 10 top-grade stellar core quintessence right away, and he stored it within the Devour system instead. After that, Yi Xian placed the piece of flesh he'd sliced off from the corpse of the region lord into the farmer god cauldron, and then he directly activated the orange flames within the furnace volcano in the central region and started roasting it. This scene immediately alarmed the purplish warbler, Duan Muxiaocha, and Zhao Qianru within the farmer god cauldron. Yi Xian's mind was connected to the farmer god cauldron at this moment, so the voices of the three women had entered his mind with extreme clarity. Time to eat. Time to eat. Wow! What an amazing act. He directly roasted it with earthen flames. I know it's definitely extremely delicious. Big scoundrel, everyone gets a share. Is there going to be a share every single day from now on? If that's the case, then the three of us won't be leaving and will help you train those animals locked up at the bottom of the volcano. Their voices hadn't finished resounding through the air when strands of blood and low curses that dared to be furious yet didn't dare speak faintly resounded from the depths of the furnace volcano in the farmer god cauldron. Moreover, it actually faintly revealed sobbing sounds. Yi Xian instantly laughed bitterly when he heard this. Looks like Ji Jingheng, Jiao Ri Tian, and the other almost 20 geniuses of the various clans in the second universe who were locked up within the numerous cages at the bottom of the volcano had definitely suffered a great deal from these three little girls. When they were captured and locked up within the cages at the bottom of the furnace volcano, Yi Xian hadn't searched for the cultivation resources and treasures they carried with them because there were too many of them. Moreover, Yi Xian's current level of vision had increased as well, so unless it was an almighty figure in the world, it was practically impossible to arouse his interest in plundering them. When the purplish warbler, Duan Muxiaocha, and Zhao Qianru were taken into the farmer god cauldron by him, Yi Xian had given the three girls a certain amount of authority in order to facilitate their activities in the cauldron. Except for the sealed space at the bottom of the volcano used to store all kinds of flesh and blood ingredients, the three girls were very. Chapter 36-26. The corpse of a primordial being at the region lord realm still carried a formidable aura of pressure. So, not to mention roasting it, ordinary experts would be heavily injured if they just approached it. However, after it was roasted by the orange flames of the farmer god cauldron, not only had all sorts of impurities been expelled, the formidable pressure had been refined and fused into the flesh and blood, and it wasn't sharp and oppressive any longer. It was precisely because of this that Yi Xian was able to devour the head of that golden crow at the World Lord realm. At this moment, Yi Xian had no choice but to leave behind 3 portions for Xianyuan Ziying and the others after he'd finished roasting this large piece of flesh and blood that belonged to a region lord. After that, he withdrew the largest portion from within the farmer god cauldron, and then he directly utilized his knife and fork to eat to his heart's content. After he finished eating the golden and oily region lord realm corpse, Yi Xian's entire body started to heat up. Now, he'd recovered his human form, and coupled with the fact that he was within the black hole of life that wasn't affected by external disturbances, he wasn't able to control his body at all. The golden and oily flesh transformed into energy as soon as it entered his stomach. Waves of multicolored light surged out from within him, and it caused the myriad of pores throughout Yi Xian's body to glow brightly. A myriad of rays of light shot into the sky, and he simply seemed like an invincible god of war that had come from the other side of space. After that, Yi Xian raised his head and swallowed the drop of evil liquid that he'd prepared. In the end, he sat down cross-legged in midair and closed his eyes before he issued an order to the devouring system, and it slowly poured the energy absorbed from the 10 top-grade stellar cores into his body. At this point, his breakthrough had finally begun. Ding! Congratulations to host for breaking through in the cultivation of the vital blood of your body. Current cultivation, perfection in the 9th rank of the mystic light realm. After an unknown period of time, when the extreme heat within Yi Xian's body had finally vanished, the familiar sound of the system notification resounded in his mind. He'd finally broken through. Opening his eyes, Yi Xian checked his body. His blood and qi were surging, and his strength had increased by a large margin. However, even though the energy within the corpse of that region lord and the quintessence of those 10 level 99 colored stellar cores had been completely exhausted, Yi Xian still felt like countless cells throughout his body were being torn apart. This wasn't unfamiliar to him. It was the sign of the origin elixir of all evil tempering his body, tearing apart the shackles of his body, and unearthing the potential of his body. Although he had only ingested a single drop of all evil origin elixir this time, it was truly extraordinary, and its subsequent effects were still spreading. Yi Xian did not hesitate and decided to strike while the iron was hot. He swallowed a bottle of level 12 liquid and broke through to the 12th realm, the Void Realm. Even if he could only stabilize at Void Realm rank 1, he would be satisfied. Soon after, Yi Xian swallowed a vial of level 12 liquid and entered seclusion once more. What was different was that this time, he was advancing towards another major realm, and not breaking through a minor realm within the same major realm. At the same time, in the space within the farmer god cauldron within Yi Xian's undying world. The golden meat roasted from the corpses of 3 region lords had been eaten a long time ago. It was the first time that the purplish warbler, Duan Muxiaocha, and Zhao Qianru had enjoyed the flesh and blood of such a living being, so the effects were even more obvious. Coupled with the fact that their cultivations were inferior to Yi Xian, breaking through was comparatively easy. As such, this time, just by eating a large piece of roasted domain lord level meat each, the 3 girls broke through one after another. In a short period of time, their cultivations all rose by 2 small realms. After they finished cultivating, the 3 of them cheered with joy, and they were delighted to the point of jumping up and down. This scene and the entire process were seen clearly by Ji Jinghong, Jiao Ri Tian, and the rest who were in the prison walls at the bottom of the central region furnace volcano. These fellows all had envious expressions on their faces at this moment. However, it wasn't only because Xianyuan Ziying and the other 2 girls had advanced by 2 small stages in succession. More importantly, it was because they were envious that they could actually enjoy this level of supreme treasure meat. They were locked up at the bottom of the volcano. Every time Yi Xian used an orange-red flame to roast all sorts of precious meat, they were the closest witnesses. The pieces of supreme precious meat that were roasted until they were golden and dripping with oil emitted an intoxicating fragrance. Unknowingly, their appetites had long since completely fallen. Slurp. It was unknown which one of them was drooling, and it seemed like there was quite a lot of saliva, and when it was sucked back into his mouth, it actually made a crisp sound. The 3 girls were alarmed, and their gazes all turned towards the prison walls at the bottom of the central region volcano, and just happened to meet the envious gazes of the 20 or so guys. Sometimes, when the light of appetite and lust was ignited in the eyes, it was very difficult to distinguish between spiciness, and it was so hot, staring straight at the ground, making one's heart tremble. And this time, the 3 girls clearly misunderstood. They were obviously greedy, but the faint green light in their eyes made them think of a bad thing. Being stared at by 20 or so big perverts at the same time, with the temperament of the 3 girls, they were originally going to flip out. Furthermore, the former were prisoners, and they were prisoners, so the 3 of them immediately rushed to the bottom of the volcano below, shouting incessantly. Damn guys, they are really a bunch of animals, they are already prisoners, but they are still so disobedient, how dare they stare at this young miss like that? They don't want to live anymore, do they? We must teach them a good lesson, they haven't been taught a lesson for only 1 day, and now they are disobedient, what a bunch of wretches. In my opinion, we should just blind their eyeballs, so that they don't roll around every day, which is annoying. Play or not, blind or not. If not, all of you can change into your original form, so that this young miss can see which part of your body is more pleasing to the eye, then cut a piece for us to roast and share, as an apology, otherwise. Humph. Oh, didn't you hear? I'm talking to you, Jiao Ri Tian, you are obviously a big fat cow, what's the point of pretending to be a human? Show your original form immediately, this young miss is going to cut a big piece of cow meat. You don't want to move, right? Fine, roast you alive is the same. As soon as she finished speaking, Duanmu Xiaocha had already made a spell to control a wisp of orange flame, which shot toward the prison walls where Jiao Ri Tian was. These days, they had used this method to show off their power, which had already frightened the 20 or so young talents of the Federation of the Second Universe. Moo! Before the orange flame rushed into the prison, there was a monstrous angry moo from inside. With tears in his eyes, Jiao Ri Tian hurriedly showed his original form at the first time, a black strong cow about 1,000 feet in size, standing in the prison with its head down, its body full of scars. Chapter 36-27. Ding! Congratulations to the host for breaking through the Qi and Blood realm. Current realm, Void Realm Level 1. As the familiar system notification rang in his mind, Yi Xian opened his eyes. His eyes glowed, and the system notification rang in his mind again. This time, it had nothing to do with the breakthrough in his cultivation level. It was to remind Yi Xian that he still had a chance to use a random system ability that he had not yet used. When Yi Xian upgraded the Devouring System subsidiary title to Level 5 Interstellar Raider, the benefits he gained were that from then on, the number of interstellar coordinates that Yi Xian could imprint on any dimension in the universe had increased from 1 to 2. There was also the halo effect that came with the title. On the basis of the previous 4 titles, Interstellar Traveler, Interstellar Adventurer, Interstellar Explorer, and Interstellar Pathfinder, a brand new system ability would be activated randomly. However, due to the various things that happened after that, Yi Xian didn't use this opportunity to the point that he almost forgot about it. Now that he heard the system's reminder, his eyes lit up and he immediately gave the system an instruction. Using this opportunity, he obtained a new ability of the system that was randomly selected. Power. Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully activating the forging system. Soon, a short system notification rang in Yi Xian's mind, indicating that this opportunity had been used. The devouring system in his body had activated another ability, which meant that a new subsidiary system had been activated. However, the forging system that had just been activated caused Yi Xian to be stunned for a moment before frowning. Forging system? It did not sound like much. Was it forging a treasure? If that was the case, then it was too useless. Yi Xian already had the fusion system. He could fuse any treasure with the same type of treasure or other suitable materials to increase its level and quality. Wasn't that what the forging system meant? It was not even as good as the fusion system. As these thoughts flashed through his mind, a trace of disappointment surfaced in Yi Xian's heart. As expected, this was a random chance given by the system. It was cheap and not good, so giving it away for free was even less worth looking forward to. After sighing a few times, Yi Xian still felt a little unwilling to give up. He also felt a little hopeful. In his opinion, the devouring system was so high and mighty. Even if the system randomly activated a new auxiliary system, it shouldn't overlap with the previous system, right? This was too stingy. Could it be that this so-called forging system has some other advantages or tricks? Anyway, since it had already been activated, it wouldn't take much time to carefully study it. At most, he would come up with nothing. That way, he could completely give up. With that thought in mind, Yi Xian immediately perked up. He began to search for all the information about the forging system in the newly updated database due to the activation of the system's new subsidiary system. He immediately began to study it in detail. Not long after, Yi Xian thoroughly researched all the information regarding the forging system. He was extremely excited. It was indeed different from the fusion system. Not only was it different, it was completely different. It shouldn't be called the forging system at all. It would be more appropriate to call it the personality replication system. Simply put, the function of this system was to replicate a certain artifact that Yi Xian already had. Furthermore, it was a personalized replication. There were options to keep or remove the personality. Of course, this kind of replication was not done out of thin air. It required a large amount of various materials. It felt as if these materials were used to reforge a new artifact. That was why it was called the forging system. But in fact, it was completely different in nature. How could simple forging be the same as rough replication? Not to mention a simple forging, even a complicated fusion would not be as rough and direct as the other party's replication. To give a very simple example, Yi Xian's personal small battleship, the Dongshu shuttle, was now a quasi-starry sky's supreme treasure. However, to reach this level, Yi Xian had gone through a total of 7 fusions. Furthermore, he had succeeded each time before reaching this level. During these 7 fusions, he had to carefully choose the same type of artifact that could be used to carry out the fusions, or the various materials that had unique abilities or attribute effects. A total of 7 fusions. It could be said that it was exhausting and time-consuming. If there was a lack of similar type of artifact or material that could be used to carry out the fusions, then he could only wait until there was a suitable one. Only then could he carry on with the fusions. However, if he let the forging system do this, it would be different. Of course, this was under the premise that Yi Xian's Dongshu shuttle had reached the quasi-starry sky's supreme treasure level after 7 fusions. If he did not have such a reference object, or rather, a model, the forging system would not be able to use it. With the Dongshu shuttle model in hand, if Yi Xian wanted to make a similar personal battleship that had completed 7 fusions and was a quasi-starry sky supreme treasure, he could just directly use the model, which was the Dongshu shuttle, and the various materials required for the forging. He could just throw them to the system. Yi Xian did not need to care about anything else. The length of time it would take was still unknown, but in the end, he would definitely be able to obtain a similar small personal battleship and complete it in one go. More importantly, this kind of duplicated forging, which was like cheating, actually had the option to be deleted, and could be customized according to one's personality. For example, if Yi Xian felt that a certain function of the Dongshu shuttle was useless, then he could just delete it during the replication forging process. As for another function, if Yi Xian felt that it was too weak and needed to be strengthened, then he could just select this option during the replication forging process and specially strengthen it. This was simply heaven-defying. Unfortunately, the more heaven-defying a system function like this was, the more stringent it would be in other aspects. The forging system that had just been activated this time was the same. Its stringent requirement was that the amount of materials required for replication forging was too terrifying. Yi Xian tried to throw the Dongshu shuttle to the forging system, then gave it a command to forge it. He also gave it access to the vast amount of resources and materials he had collected in the undying world in his body. In the end, the forging system's final evaluation almost made Yi Xian fall to the ground in shock. With the vast amount of resources collected in Yi Xian's undying world, even Star Lords would tremble in fear if they saw it. Only 4 Dongshu shuttles with identical functions could be forged. If there was a need for customization, such as deleting or strengthening a certain function, the cost would be even greater, so only 2 or 3 could be made. Chapter 36-28. After a moment of excitement, Yi Xian gradually calmed down and shook his head with a bitter smile. All this time, he had never lacked any kind of resources. Furthermore, he was extraordinarily wealthy. This gave him a sense of pride, as if he was the richest man in the world. Only now, after activating the almost man-eating forging system, did he realize that he was actually still a pauper. The vast amount of resources in his undying world was only enough to create 3 to 4 Dongshu shuttles. He could not afford to use such a luxurious forging system. If Yi Xian wanted to forge a Thunder Emperor seal, the Shinong Cauldron, the ancient Desolate Inheritance Tower, or other treasures from the Desolate Era like the Thunder Emperor seal, the Shinong Cauldron, or even the Desolate Era's Inheritance Tower, wouldn't that be enough to bankrupt him? At the end of the day, he still had to work hard and get more resources. Otherwise, he could only take it one step at a time. He could forget about enjoying this luxury to the end. However, the forging system had already been activated. If he did not use it to create a treasure and see how it worked, Yi Xian would not be satisfied. No matter what, he had to use it at least once. Otherwise, he would be letting himself down. Thinking of this, Yi Xian gritted his teeth and began to choose from the various treasures he currently had. Treasures like the Farmer God Cauldron were out of the question. He could not afford to play with them, so he directly skipped them. Quasi-starry sky treasures like the Dongshu shuttles, undying glass armor, and withered demon blood blades were also out of the question. Using so many resources just to test the effects and in the end, creating a treasure with the same function was not worth it. However, he could not just randomly create a piece of junk and give it to the forging system. That would be meaningless. In the end, Yi Xian's gaze locked onto the void battle armor. After thinking for a while, his eyes lit up. Although the void battle armor was huge, its power was mainly reflected in the tens of millions of void soldier ladles that drove it. Before it was modified, its power was reflected in the tens of millions of demon dwellers. Without the tens of millions of void soldier ladles and demon cultivator experts, it was actually not a very precious magic treasure. The current void battle armor was only at the epic star grade, which was actually quite good. For Yi Xian, this grade was just right for him to test the effects of the forging system. However, the void battle talisman was only suitable for the void soldier ladle. Yi Xian already had one, so there was no need for him to get an identical one. In any case, the forging system could be customized. Since it could be targeted to delete or strengthen a certain function, it could also be targeted to make a small change to a certain function. Also, the forging system had a very convenient function before replicating and forging a certain piece of magical equipment, which was to perform an automatic search based on the current situation and propose personalized customization suggestions to the host based on the final result of the automatic search. Without any hesitation, Yi Xian handed the void battle armor to the forging system and gave it an order to start a personalized automatic search. The results were out very quickly. What surprised Yi Xian was that there were actually two personalized forging suggestions from the system. They were the Weeping Soul Battle Armor and the Flowing Time Battle Armor. From the names of the two battle armors to be forged, it could be seen that the personalized choice targeted the driving force. For example, the Void Battle Armor was previously a spiritual battle armor, which was suitable for the demon dwellers to drive. Now that it had become a Void Battle Armor, it was suitable for the Void Soldier Ladle to drive. Similarly, if Yi Xian decided to forge the Weeping Soul Battle Armor or the Flowing Time Battle Armor, the driving force would also change. The demon dweller's spiritual power would not be suitable, and the Void Soldier Ladle would not be suitable. These two battle armors would be suitable for the Weeping Soul Beast and the Golden Slime respectively. The Weeping Soul Beast Yi Xian had captured tens of millions of Weeping Soul Beasts in the Weeping Soul Cave on the Black Mountain Star, the main star of the Black Mountain tribe. Although he had used some of them to enhance his spiritual power, he still had a total of 40 to 50 million Weeping Soul Beasts. It was more than enough to occupy one Weeping Soul battle armor. Thinking of this, Yi Xian was instantly moved. Although the resources and materials required to forge two personalized war drums were quite expensive, it was still acceptable. More importantly, Yi Xian had already witnessed the powerful might of the Spirit War Drum and the Void War Drum. Currently, he still had the effect of the Weeping Soul War Drum. He was looking forward to it. Since the Weeping Soul battle armor was driven by tens of millions of Weeping Soul beasts, its power should be about the same as the spiritual battle armor. After all, Weeping Soul beasts were all made of spiritual energy, but there would definitely be differences. According to Yi Xian's estimation, compared to the spiritual battle armor, the Weeping Soul battle armor would only be stronger. Its strong point should be the Weeping Soul beast's unique Weeping Soul effect. The terrifying attack of tens of millions of Weeping Soul beasts driving the Weeping Soul battle armor would be a fatal blow to any flesh and blood life form. An attack at the level of the primordial spirit, and consciousness. Thinking of this, Yi Xian did not hesitate any longer. He immediately gave the forging system the right to draw resources. In short, all the resources collected in his undying world were at the disposal of the system to forge the Weeping Soul battle armor. Everything unfolded quickly, and Yi Xian did not stop. While the forging system was forging the Weeping Soul battle armor, he began to study the Weeping Soul beasts stored in the various spatial pagodas. The spatial pagodas were originally refined by Old Devil Wen Xing and provided to the Black Mountain tribe's great commander. They were specifically used to store the Weeping Soul beasts. The Weeping Soul beasts were very unique. Normal spatial treasure would not be able to store them, and even directly store them in one's body would not work. However, after absorbing them as spiritual energy, the remaining tiny weeping soul blood horn could be directly stored. With regards to this, Yi Xian had always been very curious. He had studied it before, but to no avail. In the end, he could only attribute it to the fact that everything in the world had its own unique characteristics. There was really no need to investigate the cause of everything, so he did not investigate further. However, now that he wanted to make use of these tens of millions of weeping soul beasts and make them as obedient as the soldier Jiao tribe, once they entered the weeping soul battle armor, they would be able to follow Yi Xian's orders at any time. They would gather the weeping soul beast's spiritual energy and launch a powerful concentrated attack. Then, Yi Xian would have to study this matter again. Once. Otherwise, if these tens of millions of weeping soul beasts did not listen to his orders, either all of the weeping soul beast's spiritual energy would not be able to gather, or they would not be able to condense into a concentrated attack and be shot out. Chapter 36-29. The weeping soul beast was a spiritual energy life form that was related to the weeping soul blood ape. The weeping soul blood ape was the supreme primordial lord. This guy was mysterious and strange. During the primordial war, it didn't belong to the camp of the headless infant corpse, nor did it belong to the camp of the heavenly eye. Yi Xian inherited the heaven-falling bow. In the image, it was lurking in a dark corner of an abandoned planet, spying on the entire primordial galactic battlefield insidiously. This guy was definitely up to something. Perhaps the countless weeping soul beasts in the weeping soul cave on the Black Mountain Star had something to do with it. But that didn't matter anymore. Back then, the remnant soul of the weeping soul blood ape lived a second life and turned into a weeping soul blood horn. Unfortunately, this weeping soul blood ape didn't manage to grow into a new weeping soul blood horn. However, before it could grow into a new weeping soul blood ape, it met Yi Xian and was eventually refined by the headless infant corpse. Today, it was transferred to the devouring body by Yi Xian and the venerable void ladle clone through the Tower of Ancients' inheritance. It was also the body of the invincible war god that was still struggling in the territory of the human cultivators. In short, even if these weeping soul beasts had some secrets, they couldn't do anything now. The source of their bloodline, the weeping soul blood ape, had been completely subdued. How could they cause trouble? Yi Xian had collected a large number of weeping soul beasts and kept all the miniature weeping soul blood horns. Now, there were nearly 10 million of them. At this time, the nearly 10 million soul blood horns were all taken out by him, and he threw them to the devouring system to refine them. At the same time, according to the system's requirements, Yi Xian also provided some special materials. This was similar to refining the Dongshu shuttle, the undying glass armor, the withered demon blood blade, and other treasures, but it was more thorough. After a short while, the refinement was completed. Tens of millions of weeping soul horns and other precious materials were finally refined into a single weeping soul blood crystal. It was completely blood red and almost completely transparent, like the highest grade of blood red amber. Within it, I could faintly see a miniature weeping soul blood ape. It was exactly the same as the weeping soul blood horn, except that it was countless times smaller, only the size of a palm. Yi Xian only needed to refine this weeping soul blood crystal and place it in the core beehive node of the weeping soul battle Tala. Then, he would be able to use it to control the tens of millions of weeping soul beasts residing in the weeping soul battle Tala. He would make them obey his orders like the void soldier dipper horde and unleash a terrifying weeping soul strike at any time. Coincidentally, the shape of the weeping soul blood crystal was a curved horn, just like the horn. Yi Xian muttered in his heart as he played with it. He didn't know that the weeping soul blood crystal, which was the center of the kinetic energy, was made into such a shape, but it was gathered from the bodies of tens of millions of weeping soul beasts. In the end, it would turn into a mental fluctuation that shot out through the weeping soul blood crystal. Would there be an additional amplification effect? If the answer was yes, then this weeping soul battle Tala, which was about to be completed, would definitely be more terrifying than the void battle Tala. In addition to its weeping soul effect, TSK. Yi Xian couldn't wait any longer. After half a day, the weeping soul battle Tala was finally completed. Yi Xian checked the consumption rate of the vast amount of resources collected from the undying world in his body. Although it was still within an acceptable range, he couldn't help but feel his heart twitch. It seemed like he had to collect more resources in the future. The system really didn't dare to use it carelessly. Such a useful item, but it couldn't be used frequently. This was simply driving people crazy. Yi Xian definitely wouldn't be able to accept it. After shaking off these thoughts, Yi Xian waved his hand and brought out the completed Weeping Soul Battle Tala. In the void in front of him, a huge battle Tala with a diameter of 300,000 meters suddenly appeared before his eyes. In terms of external appearance, this Weeping Soul Battle Tala was exactly the same as the Void Battle Tala. The only difference was that the materials used were more suitable for the Weeping Soul Beast to move. The internal structure of all the honeycomb nodes and connecting pipes had also been adjusted to be more suitable for the transmission and amplification of the Weeping Soul Beast's spiritual energy. From the looks of it, these two were completely identical space-killing machines. The only difference was the color. The Void Battle Tala was completely gray. The Weeping Soul Battle Tala was completely soaked in the blood of the Weeping Soul. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian couldn't help but mutter, from the looks of it, the Time Battle Tala that is going to be forged later, won't it be completely made of time metal? The time metal he was talking about was the golden color of the golden slimes. Yi Xian had tens of millions of golden slimes in his hands. Moreover, he also had a golden slime mother nest, which was currently placed in a certain layer of the Starfield Life Fortress. At every moment, new golden slime would be born. The substance secreted from their bodies was the same substance that formed the entire world of Life Fortress. These golden slime derivatives were the favorite nutrients for growth. Yi Xian had thrown 2 prime life crystals that he had won from the system's competitive missions into the mother nest twice. After the energy of the second prime life crystal was depleted, the evil spirit slime's life form underwent another great leap. They had already reached a very high level. On the backs of all the evil spirit slimes, there was an additional golden line that ran from head to tail. Moreover, on their entire bodies, there was also a golden line. There were specks of golden spots on their bodies. Even the mucus secreted by their bodies had turned a faint gold color. From then on, it was no longer appropriate to call them evil spirit slimes. It would be more appropriate to call them golden slimes. At that time, Yi Xian was quite curious. He wanted to research whether this golden slime had any other characteristics. Perhaps he would be pleasantly surprised. However, he didn't find the time at all. Until recently, when he decided to duplicate and forge the Void Battle Talisman, he let the forging system follow the forging requirements of the Battle Talisman. Based on all of Yi Xian's existing resources and foundation, after an automatic search, he came up with the 2 results of the Weeping Soul Battle Talisman and the Time Battle Talisman. Only then did Yi Xian pay attention to the golden slime again. The reason why it was called the Time Battle Talisman and not the Golden Battle Talisman was because this golden slime's unique biological frequency was suspected to be related to the starry sky's time law, and it carried the power of time. Of course, the biological frequency of a single golden slime was too weak. This effect of time erosion was not obvious at all. It was so weak that it couldn't be sensed at all. However, if tens of millions of golden slime were to be like the Soldier Ladle and the Weeping Soul Beast, they would enter the Time Battle Talisman, which was completely golden in color, and gather their unique biological frequency of time attribute to launch an all-out attack. The power would definitely be heaven-defying. The law of time was originally the most mysterious law. If one didn't set foot in this field, no matter how powerful one was, they wouldn't be able to reverse time. At that time, the war of time would rumble, and it would instantly cause countless experts in the starry sky to wither away as if they had experienced tens of thousands of years in a short instant. That scene would definitely be shocking. Chapter 3630. As Yi Xian gave the order to forge the flowing time war talisman, the vast amount of materials and resources in his undying world instantly decreased. Moreover, because the power of the Time War was clearly stronger than the Weeping Soul War, it required more special materials, rare crystals, and minerals. For example, the Star Tier crystal and other epic grade crystals, some of which Yi Xian only had 3 to 5 in his hands, but this time, they were cleared in the blink of an eye. All gone, all gone. This caused his heart to twitch in pain. However, when he thought about the corrosive effect of the flowing time war talisman after it was activated, Yi Xian felt that it was all worth it. This kind of flowing time war talisman might not be the only one in the 3 universes, but at least since Yi Xian entered the flowing time war talisman. Until now, he had never encountered a similar type of treasure after entering the universe. The power of the flowing time talisman was too terrifying, especially the flowing time talisman of the universe level. It was not a domain that ordinary existences could set foot in. Compared to it, the flowing time talisman of the universe was rather ordinary. However, in reality, among the almighty existences and star lords that Yi Xian had come into contact with, there were only a few who had a superficial understanding of the flowing time talisman of the universe. As the forging of the flowing time war talisman began, Yi Xian began to ponder about another problem. That was the activation of the flowing time war talisman. There were still tens of millions of golden slimes. They could be directly transferred over from the wild star life fortress. After all, there was a golden slime mother nest there, and new golden slimes were constantly being born. Yi Xian moved tens of millions of golden slimes, and after a period of time, this number would be increased again. It would be replenished again. However, there was another problem. That was the activation of the core. Yi Xian had the 2 8-star king ladles to guard the core of the flowing time war talisman, and he also had the void essence crystal to control it. The Weeping Soul Bloodhorn originally had this problem, but now, with the Weeping Soul Blood crystal that was refined by the devouring system, Yi Xian placed it in the core of the flowing time war talisman. There was no problem in controlling the tens of millions of Weeping Soul beasts in the flowing time war talisman. However, the flowing time war talisman was different. All golden slimes were of the same level, and there were no kings among them. Yi Xian did not have the time origin crystal that contained the flowing time essence crystal could be used to control them. Thus, the activation of the core of the flowing time war talisman was empty. As a result, the battle claws of time couldn't be used at all. Even if the time biological frequency of tens of millions of golden slimes could be gathered together, it couldn't be shot out in a concentrated manner. There were only 2 ways to solve this problem. The first was to obtain a time origin crystal similar to the Weeping Soul Blood crystal. However, that kind of thing was extremely rare. Even Yi Xian had never heard of it. It was something that could only be found by chance. Now, it was basically impossible to even think about it. The other method was to obtain a slime king ladle similar to the 8-star king ladle and let it guard the core of the flowing time war talisman. Yi Xian would have to completely subdue it. Otherwise, if it did not listen to his orders, it would be a waste of effort. This method had a certain possibility of being realized. The reason why there was only one mother nest that specialized in reproduction among the golden slimes was a high-level existence of this race, while all the other golden slimes were of the same level, was because they had always been treated as a battery after they were born. They were like batteries, secreting a special liquid for the countless micromolecules of the world's slimes to absorb. Over time, they would die. At the same time, new golden slimes would be born, repeating the cycle of life and death. Although there was always a certain number of golden slimes, there was no single golden slime that could receive special care, apart from the overall increase in quality due to the absorption of prime life crystals. What Yi Xian needed to do now was to obtain a golden slime and nurture it on its own. He would find a way to raise its level of life as quickly as possible, creating a slime king and subduing it. Through it, he would be able to lead the tens of millions of golden slimes in the flowing time talisman. As soon as he thought of it, Yi Xian immediately picked out the largest and most active golden slime from the life stronghold. After a moment of hesitation, he gritted his teeth and took out a drop of all-evil origin liquid. When it came to raising the level of life and promoting the evolution of life forms, the all-evil origin elixir was the most heaven-defying of all the resources in Yi Xian's possession. After all, it was refined using the 9-colored flesh paste in the netherworld cauldron as its raw material. The 9-colored flesh paste was also a mixture of the remains, blood, and flesh of many powerful primordial life forms. From this, one could see how terrifying the quality of the all-evil origin elixir was. This was something that even those terrifying existences from the primordial era who were now hibernating to recover from their injuries needed. Some existences even only had a single drop per year. Now, Yi Xian had directly tossed a drop to this golden slime, greatly raising its level of life in a short period of time. This was something that was set in stone. At this moment, as Yi Xian took out the drop of all evil origin elixir and let it float in front of him, the golden slime that was only a meter long and about the size of an average void soldier's ladle immediately began to tremble. Its glowing golden eyes stared fixedly at the drop of all evil origin elixir. It was not afraid. Instead, it was excited. It was eager, extremely eager. Yi Xian could clearly sense these emotional fluctuations. As a matter of fact, he even had the misconception that the golden slime was trying to curry favor with him, or even beg him. Its objective was to devour this drop of all evil origin elixir that was endlessly tempting to it. This greatly roused Yi Xian's spirits. He was even more confident now. Without any hesitation, he waved his hand and poured the drop of all evil origin elixir into the golden slime's forehead. It vanished in a flash, disappearing into the golden slime's forehead. As the drop of all evil origin elixir entered its body, the golden slime shuddered violently. The transformation of its level of life immediately began vigorously. It was so intense that even Yi Xian leapt in fright. He subconsciously took a few steps back, because he was afraid of the great effects of the drop of all evil origin elixir. The golden slime was unable to endure it. It would be depressing if it exploded and was covered in filth. The golden slime was originally a faint golden color, and only its abdomen had a dazzling golden line. However, at this moment, the golden line was expanding at a visible rate. In the blink of an eye, its entire body had become a dazzling golden color. Subsequently, a golden line appeared where the golden line was at its abdomen. A violet gold line. Although this purple gold thread did not rapidly spread out like the golden thread before and completely covered his body, it extended out countless purple gold threads and gradually spread out. In the end, it covered his entire body and formed a layer of dense purple gold patterns that were like countless mysterious runes. During this process, the purple gold pattern that covered his entire body. During this process, the golden slime's body was ceaselessly expanding. In a short few minutes, when its body was around 10 meters tall, a powerful aura rumbled out from its body. Shockingly, it was the great figure of the universe. Yi Xian was shocked to the point his mouth was agape. His mind was thunderous. Chapter 36-31. A sound that sounded like the cry of a baby came out of the mouth of the purple gold slime that was floating in the void ahead. At the same time, the powerful aura of a universe almighty enveloped Yi Xian's entire body. It faintly revealed a hint of ferociousness. Moreover, the purple gold light that burst out of its eyes clearly revealed greed and a sense of threat. It was obvious that this guy hadn't had enough and wanted another drop after tasting the sweetness. From a golden slime that hadn't even reached the black hole realm, it had grown into a purple gold slime that had reached the universe realm in such a short time. Its body had even grown from 1 meter to 10 meters tall, and its entire body was covered in purple gold runes that looked like runes. It looked extremely mysterious. One had to admit that the effects of this drop of all evil origin elixir were truly amazing. It was indeed heaven-defying. However, it was obviously far from enough. The universe realm was only the 15th great realm in the universe. As far as Yi Xian knew, there were star lords, region lords, and sector lords after that. Obviously, this purple gold slime wanted to continue growing. However, that was obviously impossible, at least not for the time being. Because one universe slime was already enough for Yi Xian. Moreover, it hadn't been subdued by him, so how could Yi Xian continue to help it grow and increase its ferocity? Besides, this guy didn't look like a nice guy at all. He had just given it a great fortune, and now it was threatening him. It was turning hostile faster than Hongdo Lifeng. This kind of thing definitely wouldn't be useful if he didn't teach it a lesson. With that thought in mind, Yi Xian's face immediately darkened. He sneered and scolded, "You bastard. You want to turn on me after receiving benefits, right? So what if you're a universe almighty? Do you believe that I can destroy you in minutes? As he spoke, Yi Xian had already guided a wisp of the Sector Lord aura from the remains of the one-legged golden crow in the Shenong cauldron. At the same time, he waved his hand and released a dozen drops of all evil origin elixir, which floated in front of him. The moment the terrifying might of a Sector Lord appeared, the universe slime in the void ahead immediately retreated. The universe slime that was originally enveloping Yi Xian retreated like a tide. Immediately after, when the dozen drops of evil origin elixir entered its line of sight, the cosmos slime's eyes instantly flickered with purple light, and its rapidly retreating figure came to a halt. However, even though the strand of world lord pressure that had been drawn out by Yi Xian vanished in the blink of an eye, and even the dozen drops of evil origin elixir were quickly put away once more, the universe slime in space a few dozen kilometers ahead continued to float there. It didn't dare make any sudden movements, yet it was unwilling to leave. In the end, a wave of emotions, similar to the initial fawning to the point of almost begging, carefully extended towards Yi Xian. Under Yi Xian's coercion and enticement, the other party finally submitted to his fate. From now on, you will help me lead the tens of millions of golden slime hordes. You must obey my orders without fail. There will naturally be benefits for you in the future. I will occasionally provide you with a drop of that evil origin elixir depending on the situation. Greatly satisfied, Yi Xian nodded. He didn't beat around the bush and went straight to the point. In the end, he threatened, if you don't listen to me, you can try. Since I have the ability to nurture you, I also have the ability to erase your existence. It was also at this moment that a familiar system notification sounded in his mind. The war cry of time had finally been completed. With a wave of his hand, the void war cry and the war cry of time were summoned by Yi Xian at the same time. They lay across the void together with the weeping soul war cry that he had summoned earlier. The three war cries were lined up in a row. Their appearance was the same, but their colors were different. The gray void war cry. The blood-red weeping soul war cry. The golden war cry of time. Looking at the three great weapons of mass destruction, Yi Xian was filled with pride. At this moment, there were already tens of millions of void soldiers in the void war cry, but the other two war cries were still empty. Yi Xian didn't hesitate any longer. He immediately sent all of the weeping soul beasts into the weeping soul warship. Then, he moved tens of millions of golden slimes out of the Starfield Life Fortress and entered the thousands of beehive nodes of the Time War. After doing all this, Yi Xian turned to look at the universe realm purple gold slime floating in the void. The other party was clearly hesitating. Its intelligence wasn't low, and it was currently weighing the pros and cons. Yi Xian didn't rush it. He had decided that if this universe realm purple gold slime really refused and turned to leave, Yi Xian would definitely kill it at all costs. In the end, the purple gold slime didn't disappoint Yi Xian. Or rather, it couldn't resist the allure of the all-evil origin fluid. Just now, Yi Xian had casually released a dozen drops, so he obviously had a lot in stock. As long as it behaved well, he could trust him to give it a drop from time to time in the future. With such expectations, the purple gold slime's figure flickered and turned into a purple gold light, entering the core of the war cry of time's honeycomb nodes. At this point, the three war cries were all ready, and Yi Xian could release either one of them or all of them at any time. If it was the latter, the three war cries could release a terrifying power when fired at the same time. Even Yi Xian didn't dare to imagine it now. Even if he was facing a Star Lord, it wasn't impossible to kill him in one shot. It's been a few days since I secluded myself in the black hole and forged the war cries. I don't know what's going on outside. It's time for me to go out and take a look. While mumbling to himself, Yi Xian waved his hand and stored the three war cries into his undying world. Then, he rushed to the exit of the black hole. Before he left the heavenly mystery continent, Yi Xian had stolen 3 of Di Yi's clones, including Di Xiaofeng's and Sha Baofeng's. He had refined a total of 9 electronic consciousnesses whose mark of the heavenly mystery race had been erased. If nothing went wrong, 3 of the 9 electronic consciousnesses would enter the 3 bodies of Di Yi's clones, and Yi Xian would have 3 more clones. Even if they weren't Star Lords, there was still hope for them to reach the universe state. He had planned to implement this matter before he left, but it seemed that the forging of the Weeping Soul Warcribes and the Warcribes of Time had taken up a lot of his time, so this matter would have to be put on hold for the time being. After all, although he had completely refined the 9 electronic consciousnesses in his hands and erased all the marks related to the heavenly mystery race, he hadn't handed over the 3 bodies of DE's clones to the system for a comprehensive inspection and refinement. What if something had been done to the 3 bodies, leaving behind some sort of secret or backup plan? Once the electronic consciousnesses chosen by Yi Xian entered the bodies, it was very likely that an unexpected accident would happen. Chapter 36-32. A few days later, the vanguard fleet of the Tianji clan led by Yarrow had just arrived at the central area of the Fiend Star Zone. The demonic Emperor planet was not far ahead of them. After all, it was a 3,000-meter-long star-level battleship, fortress, and stronghold. There were more than 10,000 of them in total. It would take at least a few days to get here from the front line of the Fiend Star Zone. However, at this moment, the entire fleet was gradually slowing down, as if they were about to stop. In the command cabin on the top floor of the Expulsion flagship fortress, Commander Yarrow had a solemn expression on his face. He furrowed his brows and fell into deep thought. Right now, his only thought was to immediately return to the Tianji star field. After all, Tianji City was in chaos, and the situation in the first universe was different. Now, there was a possibility that all the slave races would rebel against the Tianji race. He was merely leading a vanguard fleet to wander around the first universe, but he could be surrounded at any time. Dumplings. However, to return to the Tianji star zone, he had to leave the Fiend star zone first, and the demonic Emperor planet was the only way. But now, more than 10 of the Fiend Imperial uncles who had been detained for generations had returned to the demonic Emperor planet. Among the slave races in the first universe, the Fiend Star Zone was ranked in the top 3 in terms of overall combat strength. Now that all the races were about to rebel against the Tianji clan, would they let them go? This was exactly what Yarrow was worried about. However, behind him, in the direction of the front line of the Fiend Star Zone, the allied forces of the second universe had started to chase after him. The situation was not good for Yarrow. There was a tiger in front of him, and there was a wolf behind him. When he thought about how this lousy commander of his had not fought a single battle after taking office, and only cared about cleaning up the mess, Yarrow had the urge to bang his head against the wall and kill himself. Comparisons were odious. Compared to Sha Baofeng, he was so pathetic. Sir Yarrow, what are you worried about? Right at this moment, Chanas walked over with a smile on his face full of concern. You're so lucky. Even the Star Lord didn't kill you with one slap. Just like that traitor Sha Baofeng, you're alive and kicking again in half a month. Yarrow frowned, and his face was full of disgust. You're really a scourge who lives for 1,000 years. You're right, I am indeed a scourge, but 1,000 years isn't enough. The corners of Chanasi's mouth curled into a strange smile that could make one ponder. Before he finished speaking, he had already made a move. Since you're troubled and don't know how to make a decision, why don't I help you make a decision? Boom! Before he finished speaking, a terrifying and majestic oppressive aura swept out from his body. It immediately bound Yi Luo's body, causing him to be unable to move. The latter was only in the 12th Grand Realm, the Void Realm. Now that the crystal life seed in Chanas's body had awakened and taken over Chanas's body, it was equivalent to old ghost Wenxing being reborn. With the cultivation of the 14th Grand Realm, the early stage of the Cosmic Light Realm, suppressing Yi Luo was a piece of cake. Aren't you investigating? This sudden turn of events shocked Yi Luo. He seemed to have realized something, and his expression changed abruptly. Unfortunately, before he could finish speaking, his body had gone limp. You will also become a traitor of the Heavenly's legacy race, because this old man has this need. The corners of Chanasi's mouth curled into a cruel smile. An invisible crystal consciousness extended from his body and drilled into Yi Luo's forehead. He was refining, just like how Yi Xian used the devouring system to refine the electronic consciousness of Sha Baofeng, Emperor Xiaofeng, and the others. However, as the clone of the mechanical core, Old Ghost Wen Xing understood the electronic consciousness of the Heavenly's legacy race too well. Even without the help of the devouring system, he could still do it easily. At this point, he erased the imprint of the Heavenly's legacy race in Yi Luo's consciousness and turned him into an electronic clone outside of his own crystal consciousness. A few minutes later, Hiero opened his eyes and got up from the ground expressionlessly. He stood next to Chanas respectfully with his hands behind his back. He was as obedient as a loyal dog, waiting for his orders. In the future, you will still be Master Yi Luo, and I will just be a flatterer who fawns over you. However, you cannot go to the Heavenly's legacy city. Find a reason to stay in the Demon Dweller Star area. At this time, Chanasi's face was already cold. He glanced at Yi Luo, who was standing respectfully with his head lowered, and turned to leave. If there is no other choice, learn from Sha Baofeng. Betray the Heavenly's legacy race and cooperate with the Demon Dwellers. In short, you have to stay here until this old man waits for that brat to come to me, Demon Imperial Star, inside the royal palace of the Demon Imperial City. Grand Elder Mo and more than 10 Demon Dweller royal uncles had returned safely a few days ago. At this time, they were gathered together with Demon Emperor Mo Wentian, the current royal uncle Mo Qigong, and a few old monsters of the Demon Dweller race who had not appeared for a long time to discuss important matters. Demon Emperor Mo Wentian, royal uncle Mo Qigong, and the others were still in shock about everything that had happened in the Heavenly's legacy city. Although they had confidence in Yi Xian, and felt that he would most likely be able to rescue all the Demon Dweller royal uncles who had been imprisoned in the Demon Dweller race this time, Yi Xian had made such a huge move. However, the commotion that Yi Xian caused in the end was so great that not only were all of the captured members of the royal families of the First Universe expelled from the Imperial Prison, but even the Imperial Prison was blown up. The entire Heavenly Secret City was in chaos. However, no matter what, they couldn't imagine it. They could never have imagined. If it wasn't for the fact that all of this had already become a fact, Mo Wentian, Mo Qigong, and the others wouldn't have dared to believe that Yi Xian, just by himself, had completely messed up the situation in the First Universe in such a short period of time. Without a doubt, as the slaves of the royal family who had been imprisoned by the Heavenly's legacy race returned to their respective races, the situation that the Heavenly's legacy race was facing was unprecedentedly severe. Coupled with the approach of the allied army of the Second Universe, even if they wanted to change all of this and send troops to conquer the slave races, they were powerless. At least, they would not be able to do so in a short time. For the Demon Dweller race, they had originally thought that after the royal uncles who had been held hostage by the Heavenly's legacy race were successfully rescued, the entire Demon Dweller race would have to face pressure from the Heavenly's legacy city. Even if the rescued royal uncles did not appear in the Demon Imperial City, once the Heavenly's legacy race questioned them about this matter, the Demon Dweller race would have to give an explanation no matter what. But now, the situation was completely different. The Heavenly's legacy race had been thrown to the back of their minds. At least, they did not have to worry about it in the near future. Now, the problem that the higher-ups of the Demon Dweller race were considering was how to unite the slave races of the First Universe to face the approaching Demon Dweller Star region's frontline battle. And the allied army of the Second Universe was coming. In addition, there was also the Heavenly's legacy race's vanguard fleet that had just arrived at the edge of the Demon Dweller Star region and seemed to want to cross the border and return to the Heavenly's legacy city. Chapter 36-33. No matter how one looked at it, the vanguard fleet of the Tianji race had at least 10,000 stellar-level ships, large and small fortresses, and fortresses of all sizes. At this time, they were all at full speed, and when they arrived at the Demon Emperor planet, the entire defense circle of the Demon Emperor planet immediately tensed up. Demon Guard 1, Demon Guard 2, and the star docks of the Demon Emperor planet, a large number of battleships set out and spread out, as if the entire race was welcoming the arrival of the enemy. However, the subsequent development took a turn of events, and everyone's eyes fell to the ground. The commander of the vanguard fleet, the core upper echelon of the Tianji race, the second most talented of the younger generation, actually walked out of the flagship expulsion almost alone and headed toward the Demon Emperor planet. Behind him, only the commander of the Demon Emperor guards, Shanas, who had left with Yi Xian not long ago, followed. What? Alliance? cooperation, or even surrender to the demon race? After a while, when the upper echelons of the demon race heard Yerua's words, the current imperial uncle Mo Qigong immediately exclaimed in surprise. He stared straight at Yerua, and his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Aren't you going back to Tianji City? Don't forget, you are the younger generation of the Tianji race. The publicly acknowledged second most talented existence. Didn't Sha Baofeng, who threw me 8 streets away, betray the Tianji race? He even caused such a big commotion. Now that the situation of the first universe has changed, the Tianji race's luck is about to run out. Only a fool will walk the same path as them. You also said that the younger generation has their own ideas. So we have to keep up with the times. At this time, Yerua was equivalent to Old Man Wen Xing's electronic consciousness clone, and his consciousness had long been completely affected. In the face of this situation, with his cunning, it was completely nothing. He responded with ease and spoke frankly with assurance. He waved his hand and said, "Do you think I'm born with milk?" In short, in my opinion, the great luck of the first universe basically has nothing to do with the Tianji race. It will fall into the hands of the top 3 slave races. The reason why I chose the Demonkin race was partly because the fleet under my command is in this star field, and I can't pass without forming an alliance with you. Partly, it was Brother Chinaska's persuasion that made me grit my teeth and make the decision. All in all, my fleet will not enter the inner defense circle of the 3 stars of the Nephilim Emperor but will deploy defenses outside the 3-star defense circle. As long as we join hands, we will be able to resist the first wave of attacks from the coalition army of the second universe that is hot on our heels and even force them to retreat. Then, I'll be able to buy some time to cooperate with the other slave races in the nearby star areas and form a solid alliance. Then, I'll have the foundation and strength to compete for the position of overlord of the first universe. It had to be said that Yi Luo's words were very pertinent. Whether it was Mo Qigong, the Devil King Mo Wendian, or great-grandfather Mo, none of them could find fault with it. Their fleet did not enter the inner defense circle of the Demon Emperor 3 stars and only set up defenses on the periphery. Moreover, they immediately faced the incoming Second Universe Coalition army together with you. They only hoped that after repelling them, they would be able to buy a certain amount of buffer time to allow the demon tribe to unite horizontally and vertically with some slave races in the nearby star field. Reaching a consensus and forming an alliance. To be honest, even if this alliance won the general trend in the future and became the new overlord of the first universe, at that time, it would be the demon race who would be in charge. They would just drink a little soup, but now, they had thrown out all their battleships and put their lives on the front line. This kind of deal was simply impossible to find. In the end, after thinking for a while and confirming that they could not find any suspicious points, the upper echelons of the demon tribe exchanged glances and could only shake their heads and sigh. The thinking of young people is indeed advancing with the times. We are old and can't understand. But it's not completely incomprehensible. The Tianji clan is basically done for this time. Boy, you are a smart person. Yes, follow our demon tribe to fight for the world. Although the one who takes the peach in the end may not be you, at least, it is much better than being annihilated by the giant will of history together with the Tianji clan. At this point, the demon tribe had basically accepted Yi Luo's surrender, and the latter did not go back on his words and did not move. He immediately ordered more than 10,000 battleships outside the inner defense circle of the Demon Emperor 3 stars to turn around and point their cannons at the star path they came from, which was the place where the pursuers were about to appear. The front line of the demon tribe star field. At the same time, a large number of battleships also sailed out of the inner defense circle of the Demon Emperor 3 stars and mixed with the vanguard fleet of the Tianji clan that had just surrendered, building a void defense line that stretched for millions of miles. As soon as the allied forces of the Second Universe arrived, thousands of cannons were immediately fired, opening the curtains of the first battle in space after the big change in the First Universe, when Yi Luo successfully surrendered to the demon tribe under the control of Old Devil Wen Xing. It was also when the Tianji main city activated its second battle form. It turned into a terrifying super fortress with a diameter of 1 million meters and entered the wormhole at the edge of the First Universe. From then on, it completely migrated and left the plane of the First Universe. Outer space. And with the departure of the Tianji fortress and the disappearance of the plane of the first universe, the star network signal of the first-level star network of the plane that originally covered the vast star field of the first universe finally disappeared completely. As the overlord of the first universe, the Tianji clan's core of the first-level star network of the star network that covered the entire plane was the immortal-level star superbrain inside the Tianji city. There were only 2 immortal-level star superbrains in the 3 universes. One was in the immortal dynasty of the human race's science and technology camp. That immortal-level superbrain built the first-level star network of the 3rd universe. Even the Federation network of the Thousand Luo Federation headquarters was attached to it. The other one was the immortal-level star superbrain in the Tianji main city of the first universe. With the departure of the Tianji main city from this plane, the central signal of the first universe's first-level star network was cut off by the universe plane barrier. Then, the first-level star network of this plane was naturally completely paralyzed in an instant. Since then, all the star fields in the first universe, except for the neighboring star fields that could still communicate with each other within a certain distance, all the star fields and races that were too far away from each other were cut off directly from each other. In other words, the entire first universe's plane had degenerated from the previous state of real-time communication to the current state of regional real-time communication. The consequences of the lack of information, or the inability to achieve real-time smooth communication, were very difficult to predict. At the very least, the thousands of races that lived in this plane could no longer communicate with each other at any time like before. The war of the warring states of the first universe, the era of heroes, had arrived in full swing. Chapter 36-34. In today's flourishing era, in the starry sky environment, if the information exchange of a star field was not smooth, the result would be a small area of unease, and if the information exchange of an entire universe plane was not smooth, the result would be a large area of panic and chaos. Under normal circumstances, it was already like this, not to mention that before the information exchange was suddenly interrupted, almost all the major races in the first universe had received a piece of shocking news that was like a heavy bomb to them. The demon race had colluded with the Tianji clan, and they were in cahoots. This was not hearsay. Before the signal of the Level 1 Starry Sky main network of the first universe was cut off, the information received by the servant clans included some video information. It clearly showed that the vanguard fleet of the Tianji clan led by Yi Luo was outside the Demon Emperor planet, fighting against the demon race. The live scene of the fleet's mixed defense. The facts were all there. There was no doubt about it, and there was no way to refute it. After this news was confirmed, the angry roars of some supreme beings and star lords sounded one after another in the major star fields of the first universe. Basically, they were all the upper echelons of the royal families who had just been tricked out of the Tianji inner city's emperor prison not long ago. Especially the giant ferocious clan and some other clans with deep servility, they did not want to rebel against the Tianji clan at all. At this time, they were even more resentful. They had a sense of grief and indignation that they had been used as a stepping stone by the demon race. Demon race, you are too shameless, too shameless. Conspiracy. There's a conspiracy. There's definitely a conspiracy. Grand Duke Missouri, what a great scheme. That side just tricked us out of the Emperor prison, and here, they turned around and sold all their cellmates. Damn it, they're simply not human. I'm so wronged. This old man was deceived. Tricks, it's all tricks. This old man only understands now. Ruthless. Roar. Almost all the slave races in the first universe were furious. Immediately after, except for a few weaker races, more than half of the other races sent out more or less fleets and headed towards the demon race star field. In their opinion, the demon race had indeed gone too far this time. It's fine if you want to curry favor with the Celestials' legacy race in order to rise up, but we're all fellow sufferers, so you can't do this. They were clearly stepping on the heads of the other races to climb up. As they climbed, they were also ruthlessly stepping on the heads of the other races. This was the rhythm of trampling all the other races to the bottom of the water and drowning them alive. In short, such actions had already aroused public anger, and the general trend was irresistible. Such a shameless race, the slave races of the entire first universe should join forces to kill them. Regarding all of this, the demon-human race was completely in the dark, completely unaware. Today, in the first universe, the signal of the Level 1 Starry Sky main network covering the entire plane was cut off. The Demon Emperor Star could only get in touch with a few slave races around the demon domain, and these races were obviously not on good terms with the demon race. The policy of befriending those far away and attacking those near them was also applicable in the Starry Sky environment. Not to mention that the Demon Emperor Star didn't take the initiative to contact these races. Even if they did, they might not tell the truth. They were all waiting for the fleets of the other slave races from the other Starry Sky main networks to arrive, and then the fleets of these races would form an allied force to attack the Demon Emperor Star. At the same time, the allied forces of various races from the second universe also arrived at the Devil Emperor Star area. The soldiers were stationed in front of the city and spread out in the void. The fleet was majestic and mighty, and the line of defense extended for millions of miles. A large part of the void of the universe was covered. The allied forces were led by 9 races: the Blood Dragon Clan, the Cyan Rock Clan, the Warrior Lion Clan, the Inji Clan, the Barbarian Bull Clan, the Golden Eagle Clan, the Colorful Python Clan, the Greedy Wolf Clan, and the Tree Spirit Clan. The fleets of these 9 races were located in the center of the defense line, and the fleets of the other races were on the 2 sides of the defense line. Up until now, only one battle had broken out in this intergalactic war on the level of the universe plane. In the opening battle, the allied fleets of various races from the Federation of the Second Universe suffered a great loss, and even a few supreme beings of heaven and earth were killed. Although a Star Lord tried to help, in the end, he was scared off by Sha Baofeng, the young master of the Tianji clan. All of this had been spread out, and countless people in the 3 universes knew about it. For the races in the allied forces of the second universe, this was a disgrace. Not only the commanders of the Vanguard fleets and the old masters in charge of the Vanguard fleets, but also the higher-ups of the races in the base camp in the rear. He had no face left, it was too shameful. But now, the situation in the first universe had changed abruptly. The Tianji clan had an accident. Sha Baofeng, the young master of the Tianji clan, who had just been conferred a title by the Line of Fire, turned against the Tianji clan on the spot when he returned to the Tianji city to accept the conferment ceremony. Even the imperial prison inside the Tianji city was pardoned by him, and then he directly blew it up. After this matter was confirmed, the higher-ups of various races in the allied forces of the second universe were very happy and felt that they had vented their anger. Some people who were gnashing their teeth at Sha Baofeng immediately changed their impression of him. They felt that this guy was too cute and pleasing to the eye no matter how they looked at him. It was really strange. Yes, why didn't they notice it before? There were even some people who were secretly vigilant, feeling that this was the birth of another devil incarnate. This guy's actions were enough to prove that not only was he a monstrous talent, but his temperament and means were also not inferior to young Master Linghu and young Master Netherworld. They were all lawless masters. The day before, he was fighting against the races of the Second Universe Federation at the front line of the Demon Kin Star area, and the entire allied forces of the Second Universe were suppressed by him. He was definitely the hero of the Tianji clan. As soon as he turned back to the Tianji clan, he immediately turned his nest upside down. This kind of thing was impossible for ordinary people to do, let alone actually do it. They didn't even dare to think about it. Such an existence couldn't be provoked. They had to avoid him if they saw him in the future. He was definitely a devil incarnate. But now, everything was fine. That brat had rebelled against the Tianji clan, and it was likely that he wouldn't show his face for a while. And now, the situation in the first universe was in chaos. Although the slave races hadn't made a clear stand against the Tianji clan, this matter was basically set in stone. The entire first universe plane was now in chaos. The true period of chaos was about to arrive. For the allied forces of the second universe, this was definitely a great opportunity that could only be encountered but not sought. Previously, their purpose was only to use the excuse of starting a war with the Tianji clan to push the front line forward until they reached the source of all evil star area. Then, they would stop and follow the instructions of the clan's ancestors. Explore and even occupy the source of all evil. Chapter 36-35. Even though it was only a vanguard, the allied forces of the various races of the Second Universe still gathered millions of battleships. However, in the first battle at the front of the demon domain, the various battleships, fortresses, and even fortresses that had been destroyed by the young patriarch of the Heavenly Fate race's hidden great killing weapon, the Spirit War Talisman, had destroyed all kinds of battleships, fortresses, and even fortresses. There were nearly 200,000 battleships. Now, this allied force only had 800,000 battleships. However, the number of slave races in the first universe had reached nearly 1,000. When the total strength of more than 1,000 races was added together, it was definitely an astronomical figure. Even so, the various races of the Federation in the second universe were determined to seize half of the first universe in one fell swoop while the Tianji clan was at its weakest. They would then divide it among the various races of the Federation and establish interstellar colonies. After this decision was made, on the other side of the wormhole at the front of the demon domain, the follow-up fleet of the races of the Second Universe Federation had begun to gather. Soon, they would pass through the wormhole and arrive. Right now, the vanguard fleet of the Second Universe Coalition Army, which had a total of about 800,000 soldiers, had received the latest order not long ago. It was to completely take down the first obstacle before this expedition, which was the demon race, regardless of everything else. Either annihilate this race, or drive the demon race out of this star field. In short, after the second battle, the entire demon domain had to be swept clean and completely controlled by the Second Universe Alliance Army. Although the demon race was powerful and ranked in the top 3 among the slave races of the first universe in terms of overall combat strength, even so, their total strength was only hundreds of thousands of battleships. After all, the total number of the demon race was only tens of millions, and they were not like the Tianji clan. A single clansman could control a large number of intelligent robots. The number of clansmen limited the size of the demon race's fleet. Although the Tianji clan's vanguard fleet was also on the outer defense line of the Demon Emperor star, it was only a scale of more than 10,000 battleships. In the overall situation of the battle, it did not play much of a role. In short, in this battle, the races of the Second Universe Federation were full of confidence, and they were determined to take down the Demon Emperor star. The great battle soon began. The 800,000 battleships of the Second Universe fired their cannons at the same time. The entire void was filled with dazzling fireworks. Countless energy light pillars of different sizes shot forward and intertwined into a giant net of destruction, covering the outer defense line of the 3 stars of the Nephilim Emperor. On the outer defense line, in addition to the 10,000 Tianji clan's vanguard fleet led by Yi Luo, there were more than 400,000 battleships of the demon race. All the battleships activated their energy shields at the first moment. At the same time, some large fortresses with a diameter of 100,000 meters activated the void oscillator, creating a chaotic void barrier area in front of the outer defense line to prevent the enemy's battleships from activating space jumps and launching suicide attacks. 400,000 versus 800,000, the disparity in the number of battleships between the two sides was too great. The 400,000 battleships of the demonic Emperor 3 stars had been suppressed from the very beginning. Battleships were being destroyed at every moment. They were no match for the enemy at all. It was only a matter of time before they were defeated. In the face of all this, the higher-ups of the demon race in the inner defense line of the 3 stars of the demon emperor behind the outer defense line were worried. At this time, a higher-up of the demon race in charge of the demon satellite 2 suddenly sent a message. From behind the 3 stars of the demon emperor, in the direction of the inner void of the first universe, huge fleets of the servant races were coming from all directions. There were at least 1 million of them. At least half of the thousands of servant races in the first universe had sent out a fleet. Right now, they had gathered into a powerful alliance army, heading toward the Demon Emperor star to jointly suppress the demon race. The Demon Emperor Mo Wen Tian was overjoyed, thinking that reinforcements had come. With the scale of 400,000 battleships of the demon race and the million-strong alliance army of the servant races coming from behind, it would not be a problem to swallow the 800,000 vanguard fleet from the second universe in one fell swoop. However, before the higher-ups of the demon race could recover from this surprise, the million-strong Alliance army from the inner void of the first universe behind them stopped steadily in the void thousands of miles away. Then, led by the fleet commanders of a few relatively powerful slave clans, the slave fleets all declared their stance and shouted at the 3 stars of the Nephilim Emperor through the directional broadcast system of the flagship of the fortresses, waging a war against them. Demon race, the time for your destruction has come. Yes, this time the overall situation of the first universe is in chaos, and you demon race are the culprits. First, you deceived all the hostages of the royal families of our races out of the imperial prison, putting our races in a disadvantageous situation, and then you immediately turned around to curry favor with the Tianji clan. This is the rhythm of killing our races. We will never agree to this. Now, all the races have sent troops and formed an alliance army to suppress. Demon race, you are doomed to die for your unjust deeds. Your retribution has come. As these voices of suppression came from afar through the directional sound transmission equipment, they resounded in the void. All the demon race clansmen around the 3 stars of the Demon Emperor were dumbfounded. Even in front of the outer defense line, in front of the galactic battlefield, in the second universe's allied army, the high-ranking commanders of the big races heard these voices. After being stunned for a few seconds, they were all overjoyed. This was really a pleasant surprise. They didn't expect the situation in the first universe to be so chaotic. The demon race had become the target of public criticism, and the million-strong Alliance army in the void behind them had actually come to suppress them. Now, the demon race was simply being attacked from the front and the back. There was no doubt that they would be able to take them down in one go. As long as they could take down the demon race and completely occupy the entire demon domain, the mission of the Vanguard fleet would be completed. They would immediately be able to use the 3 stars of the Demon Emperor as the front line, changing from offense to defense, and quietly waiting for the reinforcements of the second universe to arrive. At that time, as long as the reinforcements of the other races arrived, the million-strong army of the first universe's servant races in the void tens of millions of miles away from the demon domain was just a group of chickens and dogs. In the face of the invasion of the outerverse plane, they could fight back in their own nest. What was there to fear from such an enemy? Soon, the Vanguard fleet commanders of the 9 races of the second universe, led by the Blood Flood Dragon clan, issued orders to attack with all their strength. No matter what, at all costs, they had to take down the 3 stars of the Demon Emperor as soon as possible. The situation deteriorated in an instant. Being attacked from the front and the back, the 3 stars of the Demon Emperor were in danger. Including the Demon Emperor Mo Wen Tian, the current Imperial Uncle Mo Qigong, and the Imperial Uncle Mo who had just returned to the clan, all the previous generations of Imperial Uncles had no idea and were completely in a mess. Chapter 36-36. Yarrow, what are you waiting for? It's all because of you that the slave races are attacking us. The 3 stars of the demonic emperor are under attack. Don't you have anything to say? You won't be able to survive once the demons are destroyed. What's the point of guarding your fleets at such a critical moment? They are just some intelligent robots. Could it be that they are more important than the lives of our demon race? Is it more important than the survival of our demon tribe? Now is the time. Do it now, Chanas roared the last sentence with all his might. The Devil Emperor Mo Wen Tian and the other members of the royal family of the demon tribe were stunned. Vaguely, they seemed to have guessed what Chanas meant. They looked at each other, feeling as if they had been struck by lightning. Nobody understood how Chanas had managed to manipulate Yarrow, the commander of the Vanguard fleet of the Heavenly Fortune clan. Although Mo Wendian was a peak 9th-rank Star Lord, what was lurking inside Chana's body had been possessed by a seed of life derived from the mechanical core. The crystal consciousness was so mysterious that not even a peak Star Lord could see through it. Chanas had done that only to gain a foothold in the 3 stars of the demonic emperor. He was certain that the mysterious guy would show up, but he wasn't sure when. Nothing could happen to the 3 stars of the demonic emperor before he arrived, and his identity as Chanas couldn't be erased. He also had to earn as many credits as possible so that he could regain the trust of the demons and enter the core decision-making circle. That way, he would have a chance to approach the mysterious guy again after he arrived. Then, he would have to carry out his subsequent arrangements and plans. Hum. Hum, dense, feeble noises echoed from the 400,000 warships in the outer defense line, but it wasn't caused by the activation of the space oscillators. In fact, at this moment, the hundreds of fortresses that were originally in charge of fully activating the space oscillators and forming a chaotic void defense line in front of the outer defense line had all turned off their space oscillators at the same time. The noises came from the 10,000 warships, fortresses of the Heavenly Fortune clan. While Chana's was roaring, Yarrow had already given the order for all the warships of the Heaven's Legacy Race Vanguard fleet to activate their space jump ability and launch a suicide jump attack without exception. There was not a single member of the Heavenly Legacy clan in the tens of thousands of warships, fortresses. In the entire Vanguard fleet, only Sha Baofeng and Yiluo were real members of the Heavenly Legacy clan. The others were all intelligent robots. Even if it was a suicidal jump attack order, they would carry it out without hesitation. All of this happened too quickly. The high-level commanders of the fleets in the Second Universe United Army camp did not expect Yarrow to be so decisive. Before this, he had even activated the space oscillator to build a chaotic void defense line in front of the outer defense line. Such a move was to guard against the Second Universe's allied forces, who would launch a suicide jump attack. But now, in the blink of an eye, they had directly turned off the space oscillator, and more than 10,000 warships, fortresses, and even fortresses of different standards did not hesitate to perform space jumps at the same time. Boom! Rumble, boom! A huge roar sounded. In the blink of an eye, more than 1,000 fortresses and warships completed space jumps and appeared in the camp of the Second Universe's allied forces. They immediately self-destructed. This enormous allied force, which had more than 800,000 warships, immediately fell into chaos. In the area where the suicidal warships and fortresses landed, all the warships in the vicinity retreated as if they were avoiding ghosts. As the giant fireballs kept appearing one after another, the entire Second Universe's allied forces fell into chaos. Activate the space oscillator immediately. Stop these lunatics, we must stop them. Don't panic, we can't let the following suicidal warships complete the jump. Otherwise, more than 10,000 warships and fortresses will explode, and the entire allied forces will be annihilated. This move was too ruthless and too sudden. The higher-ups of the various races in the fleet of the Second Universe were completely thrown into disarray. No one had expected Yiluo to be so ruthless. Was this just giving his life to the demon race? He was practically protecting the demon race as if they were his father and grandfather. When did the positions of the Tianji race and the demon race switch? Who was the master and who was the servant? The demon race was just a servant race of the Heavenly Legacy clan. Yarrow was recognized as the second most talented person in the younger generation of the Heavenly Legacy clan. In the situation where the newly appointed young clan leader, Sha Baofeng, had betrayed the demon race, he was the most likely existence to become the next young clan leader of the Heavenly Legacy clan. It was necessary to protect the demon race. Regardless of everything? As huge fireballs rose in the huge allied forces of the Second Universe's allied forces, these thoughts immediately emerged in the minds of the high-level commanders of the allied forces. Even in the void thousands of miles behind the Demon Emperor 3 stars, the high-level commanders of the First Universe and the huge fleet were all dumbfounded at this time. They didn't understand how all this had happened. In the end, in the chaotic allied forces of the Second Universe, hundreds of fortresses and fortresses of various sizes activated their space oscillators one after another, successfully constructing a chaotic void defense line in front of the long allied forces. Of the more than 10,000 battleships, fortresses, and fortresses of the Heavenly Legacy clan's Vanguard fleet, less than 3,000 of them successfully completed the space jump, entered the enemy's camp, and then self-destructed. The other 7,000 battleships, because of the appearance of the chaotic void barrier, had their space jumps interrupted. They had no choice but to stop this shocking large-scale suicide jump and self-destruct. But even so, the first round of attacks launched by the 800,000 battleships of the Second Universe's allied forces was successfully controlled. The final result was that both sides suffered losses. The allied forces of the Second Universe lost tens of thousands of battleships of various types, and the 400,000 soldiers of the demon race's outer defense line in front of the demon emperor 3 stars also suffered heavy losses. The situation was still not optimistic, because the other side was obviously enraged. This time, the allied forces of the second universe suffered a small loss only because they were successfully ambushed. After they reorganized and became angry, the upcoming second round of attacks would be even crazier and fiercer. Chapter 36-37. 3 war drums stretched across the void. The huge mouth of the drum with a diameter of 300,000 meters was facing the direction of the allied forces of the second universe, and behind them was the outer defense line of the 3 stars of the demonic emperor. From left to right, there was a gray void battle talisman, a gold time battle talisman, and a blood-red weeping soul battle talisman. This was Yi Xian's handiwork. After leaving the black hole of life, he rushed straight to the demonic emperor planet. Along the way, he even used his personal interstellar communication system to capture the signals of the star network in the void and inquire about the current situation of the first universe. The disappearance of the signal of the first-level main network of the first universe, which originated from Tianji City, shocked Yi Xian greatly. In his opinion, although the super death ray bomb that exploded in the imperial prison was powerful, it was definitely not powerful enough to cause chaos in Tianji City to the point that it could not reach the star network that covered the entire first-level universe. The first-level main network was to the extent that the signal was cut off. Vaguely, Yi Xian felt that there must be something fishy about this. He originally wanted to secretly approach and see what the Tianji clan was up to, but then he learned about the crisis of the 3 stars of the demonic emperor. The Tianji clan's vanguard fleet led by Yi Luo had actually gotten involved with the demonic clan. Yi Xian could not understand this matter, but he had a comprehensive understanding of the consequences of this by capturing the weak signals of the second-level network from other races outside the demonic star region. In addition, the huge fleet of the allied forces of the second universe that had come from the demonic star region was pressing in. This time, something big was definitely going to happen to the 3 stars of the demonic emperor. In desperation, Yi Xian could only temporarily throw the doubts of the Tianji city to the back of his mind and rush to the demonic emperor planet with all his strength. At the same time that the Tianji clan's vanguard fleet launched a suicide jump attack, he arrived at this void battlefield. Seeing the Tianji clan's battleships, fortresses, and strongholds, under Yi Luo's orders, unhesitatingly launched a suicide jump, Yi Xian's doubts grew stronger and stronger. With his understanding of Yi Luo, unless this kid had lost his mind, he would never do such a thing that would harm himself. Here comes the matter. But now was not the time to delve into the suspicious points. Taking advantage of the fact that the huge coalition army of the second universe, which still had 800,000 battleships, was in chaos, Yi Xian felt that he could not miss this opportunity. The moment both sides temporarily ceased fire and prepared to reorganize themselves, he did not hesitate to rush into the void battlefield. With a wave of his hand, he summoned out the 3 battle talons that had just been forged and had already formed a fighting force. It was clear that they wanted to take advantage of the chaotic situation in the second universe to launch a destructive attack and completely defeat the enemy's huge vanguard fleet. At this moment, with the sudden appearance of these 3 huge warships, everyone who saw this scene, whether it was the second universe's coalition army in front of the battle line or the first universe's slave fleet in the void behind the demon emperor 3 stars, without exception, all fell into a daze. After a moment of stagnation, cries of surprise rang out one after another like a tide. Spirit warrior? The demon's spiritual battle cry? Heavens, there are actually 3 at once. That's not right. What happened? According to our intelligence, doesn't the demon race only have 1 spiritual battle cry? And it has already been brought to Tianji City by Sha Baofeng. Why did they make 3 in the blink of an eye? This old man understands. Conspiracy, this is AF** King conspiracy. Too bad. The demon race is too bad. They are simply prepared to face any danger. They have already dug a hole with the Tianji clan and are waiting for us to jump into it ourselves. Too shameless, too despicable. The demon race has indeed completely colluded with the Tianji clan. These 3 spiritual battle talons were definitely not made by the demon race. It is clear that the Tianji clan rushed to make them day and night and specially sent them here from Tianji City by secret means. We have been fooled. This is a trap from the beginning. The retreat of the First Universe's slave clans and the chaos of the Tianji clan are all part of a conspiracy. Even Sha Baofeng's betrayal of the Tianji clan and the emptiness of the Tianji inner city's imperial prison is very likely to be part of their plan. It is for this moment. The 3 battle talons are across the void. The entire huge camp of our coalition army has already penetrated deep into the demon race star field. Even if we turn around and retreat, we won't be able to. It's time. This is the rhythm of a pot. That's right, it must be like this. Don't you see that there is an army of millions of slave clans in the void behind the Demon Emperor 3 stars? Bulsh *T Crusade, they are in cahoots with the demon race from the beginning. After the 3 battle talons are destroyed, they will rush forward together with the demon race's fleet. They are beating a dog in the water. Retreat. Retreat immediately, retreat at full speed. We have been fooled. As these exclamations sounded one after another, the long camp line of the Second Universe Alliance army was completely messed up. Nearly 800,000 battleships, fortresses, and fortresses of all kinds were in chaos again before they could break free from the chaos of the previous wave of jump-type suicide attacks. All of them were in chaos. They quickly retreated. In the void thousands of miles behind the Demon Emperor 3 stars, in the First Universe's slave clan subjugation coalition army, in the flagship of the slave fleet, the upper echelons of the various clans looked at each other, their minds in chaos. The exclamations from the Second Universe's coalition army made too much sense. Even they were stunned at this moment. Could it be, was it really like this? Was the chaos in the Tianji city fake? Was Sha Baofeng's betrayal of the Tianji clan fake? The escape of the hostage members of the royal family of the various slave clans, so that the imperial prison of the Tianji inner city was completely empty. Was all of this fake? Was it just to set up this trap in front of them and completely wipe out the million-strong vanguard fleet from the Second Universe? These thoughts flashed through the minds of the high-level commanders of the slave clans, one after another. Their minds were all in a mess. Even Mo Qigong, Grand Elder Mo, Demon Emperor Mo Wendian, and the others in the 3 stars of the Demon Emperor were stunned when they suddenly heard these words. Of course, what made them even more confused was, what the hell was going on with the 3 battle talons in the void of the central region of the front position? Demon Emperor Mo Wendian, Mo Qigong, and the others naturally recognized the void battle talon on the left. They had just finished remodeling it not long ago and handed it to Prince Xian to bring to the Tianji city. It seemed that it had fallen into Prince Xian's hands again. But this wasn't right. If that was the case, where did the other 2 battle talons come from? Prince Xian was alone, so he couldn't build them at all. On the other hand, if the Tianji clan worked overtime in the outer industrial circles, it was more or less possible. Chapter 36-38. With the appearance of the 3 battle towers, the people of the entire void battleground were thrown into chaos. The allied forces of the Second Universe believed that this was all a conspiracy, and the purpose was to annihilate the entire allied forces in one fell swoop. But what made them angry was that they had really been fooled. They did not even suspect the big lie of Sha Baofeng, who had just received the young master's warning, of betraying the clan. They were simply pigs. No, they were even worse than pigs. In the allied forces, the high-ranking commanders of the major clans of the Second Universe were so angry that they almost vomited blood. They were so regretful that their intestines turned green. The allied forces of the slave clans of the First Universe were also filled with doubts. They also believed it and suspected that this was the plan of the demon race and the Tianji clan to keep the other clans in the dark. Many of the high-ranking members of the clans who really wanted to take this opportunity to rebel against the Tianji clan had already begun to feel nervous. They were worried that the Tianji clan had another intention, which was to use this opportunity to test the loyalty of the other slave clans. When they thought of this, they hated the demon-human race even more. They were all a slave race, but they actually dared to sit on top of their heads and act like tyrants with the Tianji race. They were here to bring disaster to their suffering brothers. This was really a misunderstanding that made people not know whether to laugh or cry. Even Yi Xian did not expect this, and he was already speechless. It was no wonder that these fellows thought this way. With the sudden appearance of the 3 battle drums, even the upper echelons of the demon royal family were stunned. They began to suspect that Yi Xian had sold them off, let alone anything else. Apart from the Tianji clan, it was basically impossible for any other clan to build another 2 battle towers in such a short time. This was the truth. If it wasn't for the fact that old man Wen Xing knew the cause and effect of the entire matter, even he would be suspicious. But at this moment, although he wasn't like the others, suspecting that Yi Xian was colluding with the Heavenly Fate clan, he was once again shaken by Yi Xian's mysterious methods. He couldn't figure out how Yi Xian was able to create another 2 warships in such a short period of time. This was a colossus with a diameter of 300,000 meters. It wasn't something that could be created overnight. A sharp glint flashed across Chanasi's eyes, but it was quickly concealed. However, there was a faint trace of excitement on his face. The more mysterious the other party was, the more valuable they would be to him. His interest was growing more and more intense. Yi Xian didn't pay attention to all of this. If anyone wanted to misunderstand, then just let them misunderstand. It just so happened that he was able to maintain a bit of mystery. Even now, the celestial legacy race still had not revealed his true identity. This made Yi Xian very surprised and a little confused. He had no idea just what kind of medicine they were selling in their gourd. But no matter what, this was still good news. As long as the secret of his identity was not exposed, Yi Xian would have a lot less to worry about. As for the problem of the Heaven's legacy race secretly scheming against him, all he had to do was be a little more vigilant. Since they didn't reveal their identities, Yi Xian naturally couldn't expose himself. He had already returned to his original appearance, which was the appearance of Prince Xian that the outside world was familiar with. However, now that he was in charge of the Weeping Soul Battle Army, he didn't know which identity to use. Since he had to reveal his appearance, he might as well not come out. However, this matter could be considered later. However, the arrow in front of him was already on the bow, so he had no choice but to fire it immediately. Taking advantage of the fact that the allied forces of the various races of the second universe were still hurriedly and chaotically retreating millions of li away from the void, Yi Xian immediately gave the order to attack the Weeping Soul Battle Army. Although the combined attack of the 3 battle army would definitely be more powerful, this was the Demon Emperor Star region. Yi Xian was really worried that he would directly create a super large black hole. If that happened, he wouldn't be able to explain himself to the demon race. Because of this, he didn't even dare to use the Void Battle Army. The Void Soldier Ladle race's unique biological wave frequency contained the power of the Void Law. The few void turbulence vortexes in the industrial circle around Tianji City were a good example. Yi Xian really didn't dare to randomly attack a random area. As for the Time Battle Army driven by tens of millions of golden slimes, it contained the power of the space-time law. In Yi Xian's opinion, its power should be the strongest of the 3 battle army. Naturally, it should be used last to decide the outcome of the battle in one blow. Thinking about it this way, the only one suitable to activate now was the Weeping Soul Battle Army that he personally guarded. Inside the Weeping Soul Battle Army, tens of millions of Weeping Soul beasts and thousands of beehive nodes all began to move after Yi Xian activated the Weeping Soul Blood Crystal. In thousands of beehive nodes with a diameter of 3,000 meters, tens of millions of Weeping Soul beasts fully activated the unique Weeping Soul spiritual wave of their race. This unique spiritual wave frequency energy converged from every beehive node and flowed along the special channels between the beehive nodes to the core node of the core circle, gathering into one. In the end, as the Weeping Soul blood crystal that floated in front of Yi Xian suddenly trembled, this terrifying and unique spiritual wave transformed into an incomparably sharp howl. It was like the roar of a sea of rage that instantly leaked out. Screech, the mournful Weeping Soul cry shrieked in the void. The entire vast and boundless star field trembled in the face of this sudden and violent howl that suddenly descended. This terrifying howl that was sharp enough to tear the sky apart instantly caused countless experts in the void to tremble violently. Even their minds and consciousnesses were in a daze at this moment, as if their spiritual bodies were being drawn by the howl and were about to leave their bodies. In the void in front of the weeping soul battle army, there was an invisible tide like the sea of stars that suddenly burst out from the core node. It flowed along the 9 outer layers of the battle army, continuously expanding until it finally turned into an invisible force that could topple mountains and overturn seas. In an instant, it directly faced the huge mouth of the battle army. The vast void was completely enveloped in an invisible shroud. There was no shocking scene of the void shattering inch by inch. There was no earth-shattering rumble of an explosion. There was also no turbulent whirlpool of the void like a black hole. There was only an indescribably mournful howl that reverberated in this corner of the void. There wasn't even an invisible shockwave. It was as if the full blow of the weeping soul battle army didn't have any substantial lethality at all. It couldn't shake everything in sight. Just hearing seemed to have suffered a great challenge. At this moment, all the experts in the 3 camps far and near in the void felt a little dazed. This was really the most perfect demonstration of the saying that the wind was loud, but the rain was small. It was as if their eyes had dropped to the ground, rolling all over the void. But at this moment, Yi Xian grinned. Just as the smile at the corner of his mouth slowly outlined, in the nearest battleships of the second universe in the void in front of him, there were suddenly extremely mournful but extremely short screams. Ah, ah. One after another, in half a breath, it was densely packed, and it resounded like an overwhelming sound. However, only the sound could be heard, and no abnormalities could be seen. All the battleships, fortresses, and fortresses that were shrouded by this weeping soul cry sound wave were still motionless in the void. Chapter 36-39. Ah, ah. Numerous shrill howls resounded in space. Every single one of them was extremely short, yet they covered the heavens and the earth, and they densely covered the heavens and the earth without end. It caused a feeling of terror that caused one's back to go cold and one's scalp to tighten to instantly spread out and envelop this corner of the starry sky. This scene was too strange. The extreme contrast between visual and auditory gave people a completely unreal feeling. On the opposite side of the battlefield where the terrifying trumpet of the 3 huge warlords was facing, among the nearly 800,000 battleships of the second universe's various races, except for a small half of them that had already retreated, or before the Weeping Soul Warlord was activated and released this Weeping Soul Roar attack, they had already activated Space Jump. Outside the battleships that had the ability to jump far away. More than half of the battleships, fortresses, and fortresses of all sizes were still in the fan-shaped deep area directly in front of the 300,000-meter huge trumpet of the Weeping Soul Warlord. These miserable howls that made one's whole body feel cold came from these nearly 500,000 battleships, fortresses, and fortresses. However, the miserable howls resounded through the void, but these 500,000 battleships were still floating there unscathed. There was no abnormality at all. It was as if the earth-shattering mournful howl of the Weeping Soul Warlord had no effect on them at all. This was unbelievable, but it happened to be the truth. The Weeping Soul Warlord's Weeping Soul Roar did not have any physical attack power. It was precisely because of this that its attack effect on the soul, spirit, consciousness, and other levels was even more shocking and horrifying. The Weeping Soul Beast's Weeping Soul spiritual wave was not only effective against demons with spiritual power, but also against human cultivators who cultivated primordial spirit, as well as the consciousness level of other races or life forms, such as electronic consciousness, crystal consciousness, and so on. The shrill and harsh howl lasted only a few seconds, then it completely disappeared and could no longer be heard. Then, after another 2 or 3 seconds, as if in response to this mournful howl, countless miserable howls that appeared followed by this mournful howl also completely disappeared. The void returned to silence, a deathly silence. Everything before was like a dream. The mournful howl seemed to have never appeared, because everything in the void in front of them had not changed at all, making people suspect that they had auditory hallucinations. Right at this moment, an earth-shattering roar suddenly resounded through the void, roar. Weeping soul roaring 10,000 seas emptiness. With just one howl, more than half of the living beings in the 500,000 battleships had perished. Who exactly are you? what kind of method is this? Ah. These words came from the mouth of a 15th realm expert. The mighty pressure of the universe was incomparably clear, but there was also an extremely strong sense of fear and shock in his words. Even his voice trembled. In the end, it was as if he could not control the trembling of his heart due to fear. It let out a shrill howl as if it was venting its anger. Then, furious roars echoed one after another from the 500,000 warships, fortresses in the fan-shaped area covered by the enormous trumpet of the weeping soul war beast. Dead. He was already dead. Ah. How could this be? How could there be such a weapon of mass destruction? That's impossible. Heavens, what kind of black technology has the heavenly legacy race mastered to be able to create such a terrifying weapon of mass destruction? Is this still the power of science and technology? It's only effective on the mental consciousness level. It's targeted to crush this domain. Who can defend against it when caught off guard? It's too tragic. Too cruel. Everyone fell straight down. This scene is simply a nightmare. Ah, who are you? Who are you? These furious roars basically all came from the mighty figures of the universe. There were also some who belonged to the 14th Great Realm, the Cosmic Light Realm, or the 13th Great Realm, the Genesis Realm. However, there was not a single existence below the 12th Great Realm, the Void Realm. It was as if the countless experts of the Second Universe in the nearly 500,000 warships, fortresses, except for a few existences above the 13th Great Realm, the Genesis Realm, had all died. Even the voices of the experts above the Genesis Realm who were roaring were filled with intense fear and weakness. It was obvious that even though they had withstood the Weeping Soul Battle LA's shrill howl that lasted no more than 10 seconds, they had not died. But in the end, they had more or less suffered some injuries. This was a soul injury, a blow to the mental consciousness level. It was the most difficult to recover from. They needed to rest and nourish with targeted heaven and earth treasures before they could slowly recover. There were nearly 500,000 warships, fortresses of various types. Although there were only about 10,000 fortresses of various sizes, and about 100,000 fortresses of various sizes, the rest were all star-level warships that were 3,000 meters long. However, the total number of powerful beings from various races in the Second Universe that were stationed there was definitely an astronomical figure. According to the surviving experts of the Genesis Realm and above, most of the countless experts of the Second Universe in the nearly 500,000 battleships had died in less than 10 seconds. Furthermore, all of them were unharmed physically, but their souls had been annihilated. As this thought flashed through their minds, all the existences in the entire space battlefield, no matter which camp they were in, who knew what had happened, shuddered and subconsciously trembled. Including Yi Xian himself. He had never imagined that the effect of the Weeping Soul Battle LA's Weeping Soul Battle Law would be so terrifying. It was truly the sound of the Weeping Soul Battle La Cosmos. It was too frightening. This really has nothing to do with me. I didn't expect this attack to be so terrifying. Dumbfounded, Yi Xian muttered to himself. When he thought about how at least hundreds of millions of creatures of the Second Universe had died in his hands in just a few short breaths, he felt a strong sense of guilt. Fortunately, the nearly 500,000 warships on the other side were all from the various races of the Second Universe, and there was no human fleet mixed in. Otherwise, wouldn't this attack be equivalent to killing countless human compatriots? Thinking of this, Yi Xian smiled bitterly. It seemed that this Weeping Soul Battle Law could not be casually used in the future. Or rather, he had to go back and explore carefully to see if he could fine-tune the Weeping Soul Battle LA's Weeping Soul Battle Law in terms of power, range, and so on. Control. In that case, only by using the Weeping Soul Battle Law could he avoid the situation where a large number of people would die in an instant when it was activated. The killing intent was too heavy. Chapter 3640. Out of the 40 million Weeping Soul beasts, nearly 100,000 of them had perished on the spot after that attack. Their spiritual bodies had directly dissipated. The casualty ratio was 2 in 1,000. It didn't sound like a lot, but it was definitely unbearable for Yi Xian. It had to be noted that the weeping soul beasts weren't like the golden slimes, who had a nest that could produce new members incessantly. They were basically like the void soldier ladles. Also, the weeping soul beasts were obviously more fragile and vulnerable than the void soldier ladles. The former was a crystal creature with a tough body, while the weeping soul beasts were like ghosts. They didn't have a physical body at all, they were just pure mental consciousnesses. They were spirits. They were sentient beings. After only one attack, almost 100,000 weeping soul beasts' bodies of consciousness were destroyed because of overexertion. All the other weeping soul beasts are exhausted, they won't be able to launch a second attack until they recover. The entire weeping soul beast population will have to rest for at least a few days before they recover. As he muttered to himself, Yi Xian's brows furrowed tighter and tighter. This time, he finally realized where the greatest flaw of a starry sky killing weapon like Zhanla was. During the first battle between the vanguard fleets of the two camps at the frontier of the demon space zone, the Star Lord of the Demons launched a powerful attack under the leadership of tens of millions of experts. Some of the experts who were guarding the beehive nodes were killed, but Yi Xian hadn't realized how horrifying the casualties were. Then, in the space zone of the Heavenly Fate City, some of the void soldier ladles that had been modified also died of exhaustion after the first attack. Yi Xian hadn't realized it back then either. But after the same problem happened twice, if it still didn't cause some kind of alarm and alertness when it appeared for the third time, then this kind of hindsight and sluggishness on the level of consciousness would really make one speechless. At this moment, Yi Xian was deeply aware of the importance of the controllability of the Warhorn's power. Otherwise, every time it was activated, it would be an all-out attack that didn't care about the consequences. After a few more rounds, not to mention the soldier ladle or the weeping soul beast race, even he himself would feel heartache. However, it wasn't the time to delve into the matter. The situation on the battlefield didn't allow Yi Xian to do so. While he was frowning and pondering, almost half of the 500,000 battleships, fortresses in the fan-shaped area where the Weeping Soul warship was facing had performed space jumps and escaped from the fan-shaped area covered by the enormous mouth of the Weeping Soul warship at their fastest speed. In the district. Although most of the experts of the races of the second universe had perished, at least some of them, those above the 13th level of the Genesis, were still alive. They were the ones who had activated the space jump ability to move the warships to the enemy's camp. As for the other half, more than 200,000 battleships of various types, they were still floating in place, motionless. Obviously, all the elites of the second universe in these battleships had all died. Even if there were a few survivors, it was not enough to activate the space jumping ability of the battleships and control them quickly. And escape. At this time, in this half of the warships, there were a few experts rushing out of the warships, crossing the void with their bodies, and escaping to the rear. More than 200,000 warships, which were seriously lacking in operators, could only be helplessly abandoned on the battlefield, like a ghost city. They emitted a strong aura of despair, floating in the void of the galaxy. At this moment, a voice that was not loud, but its pressure was terrifying, sounded. It was like a soft voice, but it could be heard clearly in every corner of the boundless void of the battlefield. This kind of great killing weapon is too harmful to the harmony of the heavens. It must not be allowed to exist. No matter who you are, either destroy it on the spot, or let this old man do it personally. Star-Lord Old Monster. The Star-Lord Old Monster was going to make a move. Previously, in the first battle between the vanguard fleets of the two camps at the front of the demon territory, tens of millions of demon powerhouses activated the Spirit War Kara and roared out 3 void turbulence vortexes in the void of the battlefield. 6 of the 20 supreme beings of the second universe fell. All of them were caught off guard and were sucked into the void. In the space turbulence vortexes, they were exiled, no different from dying. However, even at that time, the Star-Lord Old Monsters of the 9 great races, including the Blood Flood Dragon clan, had never really made a move. Although there was a giant energy palm that came across the sky, they were scared away in the end and did not really fight to the death. At this moment, the Weeping Soul War Kara attacked with all its strength. Although no 15th Realm supreme beings of the universe were killed, the number of bottom-level powerhouses of the second universe who died because of this attack was too large, almost hundreds of millions. Under such circumstances, the Star-Lord old monsters of the 9 great races, including the Blood Flood Dragon clan, finally could not sit still. It was impossible for them to sit still and do nothing. At this moment, they spoke, their tone was cold and firm. It was obvious that they were determined to kill the Weeping Soul War-Kara and even the void of the battlefield ahead of them. The 3 War-Karas in the air were all destroyed. Ruthless. Rumble, an earth-shattering roar resounded. From a major fortress of the enemy camp, a 7-colored light blasted out. In the blink of an eye, it arrived in front of the void battlefield. It shook its body and turned into a huge mottled python. The Star-Lord aura spreading out of its body seemed to be able to crush the void. As soon as it appeared, 2 scorching lights burst out of the colorful python's eyes. It turned into a ray of light and rushed over. However, after the 2 dreamlike rainbow-colored light beams shot out from the huge colorful python's eyes, their speed was extremely fast. There were even strange sizzling sounds coming from the void space. It was as if boiling oil had been splashed onto an ice field, and it was rapidly melting. Hiu! Hiu! They darted over at an extremely high speed and locked onto the Weeping Soul War-Kara and the Time Kara. These 2 beautiful pillars of light were the bloodline abilities of the colored python race, named Furious Python Blazing Rainbow. Although they looked ordinary, they even had a kind of gorgeous, devilish beauty. However, their power and lethality were extremely terrifying. During the battle in the Heavenly Battle Star Zone of the Third Universe, the young heavenly talents of the Second Universe had rushed into the Shinon Cauldron. One of them was the little princess of the Colored Python clan, Medusa. At that time, a young genius from a top-tier family in the human race's science and technology camp was fighting fiercely. Unintentionally, he dashed to the front of the 2 7-colored light beams that were shot out by Medusa's Furious Boa Rainbow bloodline ability. Chapter 3641. Although Medusa was the little princess of the Colored Python clan and had a strong ancestral bloodline in her body, she was still a young descendant of the Colored Python clan. Her cultivation wasn't very strong, at least far from being on par with the Star Lord of the Colored Python clan who had transformed into a 10,000 feet long colored python. Even so, Yi Xian was still shocked and fearful when she used this strange bloodline ability in the Shinon Cauldron that could instantly petrify a Starry Sky Master and completely lose all vitality. Now, this ability was being used by a Star Lord of the Colored Python clan whose strength was far greater than Medusa's. There was no doubt about its power. Yi Xian, who was sitting in the Weeping Soul Battle Tower, felt his heart tremble and immediately became nervous. He naturally had methods to deal with a Star Lord, but now, since the Tianji clan didn't reveal the secret of his identity, Yi Xian couldn't use those methods easily. Otherwise, wouldn't it be equivalent to exposing his identity? He was helping the demon clan against the allied forces of the Second Universe. His identity as Young Master Linghu, Young Master Yuming, or Prince Xian was not suitable. It was the same for his identity as the Young Master of the Tianji clan, Sha Baofeng. Therefore, Yi Xian couldn't use any of the methods related to these identities. The only thing he could rely on and use were the 3 battle towers. Perhaps he could go back and make some plans for the 106 nine-eyed golden crystals. Then, he could devour another one and obtain a new Desolate Era ability. But now, Yi Xian could only rely on the 3 battle towers in the face of the Colored Python clan Star Lord. The Colored Python clan was one of the top 10 clans in the Second Universe in terms of overall strength. Although it wasn't as strong as the Blood Wyrm clan, the Cyan Rock clan, or the Battle Lion clan, it was still very famous. The bloodline ancestor of the Colored Python clan was said to be a 9-colored fiendish python. That 9-colored fiendish python existed in the beginning of ancient times. It was said that its bloodline originated from the primordial supreme dragon python that disappeared in the late ancient times. Yi Xian had seen a terrifyingly huge mottled python in the image imprint of the great ancient battle in the heaven-falling Bao inheritance. It was indeed a supreme primordial existence, like the golden divine dragon and the primordial Yiksha, but it belonged to the enemy camp. Therefore, Yi Xian didn't have a good impression of the colored python clan. Since that was the case, Yi Xian naturally didn't feel any pressure when using the most powerful time war. Even if he killed the python in one fell swoop, it wouldn't matter. In any case, even if his identity was exposed in the future, Yi Xian wouldn't care if this debt was placed on his head. He and Kai Python clan. In fact, other than the Battle of Time, he didn't seem to have any other means to use under the circumstances where he couldn't reveal any of his identities. The Void Battle of Time was far from enough to force back the Star Lord. Even the mighty experts of the universe were caught off guard in the first battle and were pulled into the void turbulence vortex that suddenly appeared. That was why they died. Just the power of the Void Battle of Time alone didn't seem to be able to kill the mighty experts of the universe. Annihilation. The Weeping Soul Battle of Time was the same. It had been used just now and couldn't fight again for a while. And its power didn't seem to be suitable. Killing the mighty experts of the universe and severely injuring the Star Lord was still a little far away for the current Weeping Soul Battle of Time. Perhaps in the future, when the tens of millions of Weeping Soul beasts living in the thousands of beehive nodes of the Battle of Time were stronger, they would be able to display such power. But now, under the circumstances of an indiscriminate area of effect attack, it could only instantly destroy the souls of experts below the 13th realm, the Genesis realm. If he wanted to deal with the universe masters and star lords, he would have to use the War of Time. This was the only hope Yi Xian had. Just as the two pillars of petrification energy were about to hit him, he immediately teleported from the Weeping Soul War Talisman to the Flowing Time Talisman. The three War Talismans had already been refined by him, and there was a small fixed teleportation formation between them. Yi Xian could reach them with a thought. As Yi Xian's figure appeared at the core of the Time War Cry, he looked up and saw the Cosmos Slime crouching on the ground. Yi Xian immediately gave the order to attack with all his might. This golden-purple slime king had a massive body, reaching a length of 10 meters. Although its cultivation far surpassed Yi Xian's, all of this was still given to it by Yi Xian. Moreover, it clearly wanted more, longing for a second drop of all evil origin elixir. Therefore, it did not hesitate in the slightest when it heard Yi Xian's command and immediately took action. Hum. With this very slight buzzing sound, a circle of invisible ripples spread out from his body in an instant, entering the four walls of the core beehive node, and along the pipes connected to the outer wall. It was instantly transmitted to the thousands of beehive nodes of the Battle of Time. At this moment, the tens of millions of golden slime in all of the beehive nodes trembled. The long golden thread under their abdomens shone brilliantly, and then their entire bodies shone with golden light. This golden light was actually the biological frequency of the golden slime. If there was only one of them, it would not be enough to cause much trouble. However, when there were many golden slime, layers of golden screens stacked on top of each other and gathered together. In the end, the faint golden light turned into a rich golden color, charging into the walls of the beehive as if it had a mind of its own. It then followed the pipes on the outer walls and traced back to the four walls of the beehive nodes. From all directions, it surged toward the core beehive node where Yi Xian and the Cosmos Slime were. All of this took a long time to describe, but in fact, it happened in an instant. Moreover, it happened inside the War of Time. Tens of millions of golden slime's bodies shone with golden light. Outside the War of Time, there was not a single trace of it. Only in the end, when the dense golden light gathered from the thousands of beehive nodes and entered the core beehive node, did the core beehive node, located in the center of the ninth ring of the giant war drum, suddenly lit up. In an instant, the core beehive node, which was 3,000 meters in diameter, completely turned into a golden world. At the same time that it suddenly lit up, waves of golden ripples spread out along the war drum like tides. In front of the huge drum mouth, they evolved into a golden fan-shaped ripple and quickly spread out. It expanded forward and pushed forward. In the blink of an eye, the front edge of the golden fan touched the two huge pillars of petrification divine ability light. Whoosh. Chapter 3642. The universe was heartless and treated everything as dogs. People were born, grew old, got sick, and died, and the moon waxed and waned. Wind, rain, thunder, lightning, earth, fire, and the cycle of life, death, and reincarnation all had their own eternal laws. The laws in the universe were different from those in the narrow, independent planets. They were more transcendent and complicated. The experts of the star state would only be qualified to touch the laws of the universe when they reached the 15th level of the star state. As for those who became star lords, they would only have a superficial understanding of the laws of the universe that they had studied. Every star lord had a different understanding of the laws of the universe. None of them had ever studied all the laws of the universe. They would usually pick the easier ones and spend their entire life studying them. The laws of time were one of the most mysterious laws of the universe. Few experts of the star state could touch them. However, this did not mean that no one could recognize the power displayed by the starry sky time laws. Even if one had never eaten pork, they would still have seen pigs run. It was precisely because of this that the moment the fan-shaped golden tide of power that leaked out from the ninth core beehive node of the mouth of the raven of time appeared, a wave of astonished cries rang out in the surrounding void like a tide. Almost all the experts of the universe and the star lords were horrified. They were completely shocked by the ruthless aura of the erosion of time that they had captured. This was especially so for the 100,000 feet long rainbow python that was directly facing the fan-shaped golden tide of power. As it cried out in alarm, its figure rapidly retreated as if it was avoiding a ghost, fearing that it would be too late. Unfortunately, no matter how fast it was, how could it be faster than the power of time? In the blink of an eye, the golden fan-shaped energy that had eroded the two pillars of petrification power completely enveloped the space where the python was. A mysterious power immediately spread out, causing the rapidly retreating figure of the python to come to a halt, as though it had been sealed. It couldn't move at all in that area of the void. Almost at the same time, the huge body of the colorful python suddenly darkened rapidly. In less than half a breath, the colorful python's scales that covered the entire surface of the huge body were lifted up one by one and flew out of the body. They quickly turned into gray specks of dust and completely dissipated. It looked as if the colorful serpent was shedding its skin in the void. After the members of the colorful serpent evolved into the Star Lord state, their true bodies would only shed their skin once every 10,000 years. 10,000 years had passed in the blink of an eye, but the Star Lord colorful serpent's aura didn't increase at all. It was as if it had lost 10,000 years of vitality for nothing. Although it wasn't enough to cause him to immediately die on the spot, and it didn't even weaken his cultivation and strength in the slightest, this was merely the first wave of the tide of time. Just this wave of time, in less than a breath, had washed away tens of thousands of years of time. It wasn't just the colorful serpent. A lot of space warships in the fan-shaped area were affected too. Of the 200,000 warships, fortresses that the coalition army of the Second Universe had abandoned after the Weeping Soul Battle Llama's attack, almost half of them were in the golden fan-shaped area, behind the colorful serpent. Now, as the first wave of the tide of time washed over them, the more than 100,000 warships of various types instantly dimmed and became dilapidated at a rate visible to the naked eye. The Star Lords were able to withstand the passage of 10,000 years, but it was completely different for the cold, lifeless warships. Some of the warships had already started to disintegrate in the later part of the tide of time. Rumble. Boom. Soon, there was an earth-shattering roar, but there was no explosion that soared into the sky. A large number of battleships turned gray and eventually shattered. The dragon bones collapsed and completely turned into a pile of broken alloy garbage, floating in the void, turning into a shadow, causing the entire battleship to turn into a shadow, causing the entire battleship to turn into dust. The enormous body of the colorful serpent was no longer colorful, it looked lonely and old. Without the slightest pause, at the same time that the first wave of time had not gone far away, at the source of the entire golden fan-shaped area, a second wave of golden ripples visible to the naked eye had already ruthlessly whistled out from the mouth of the horn, screech. Seeing that the second golden tide of time was approaching, the colorful serpent, who couldn't move at all, was appalled. Its huge eyes were filled with fear, and it let out a panicked roar. 10,000 years in one tide. As a Star Lord, the maximum lifespan of the colorful serpent was only 20 to 30,000 years. If the tide of time passed a few more times, it would completely age in the golden ripples. Tens of thousands of years would pass in the blink of an eye, and it would eventually decay due to old age. It would die. Before its roar died away, the second tide of time had already arrived. Visible golden ripples washed over the colorful serpent's body. Its roar instantly weakened and then disappeared. After the first tide of time, the colorful serpent seemed to have been washed clean. Its entire body was no longer mottled, and it was completely gray. However, its cultivation aura wasn't affected, and it was still powerful. Now, as the second tide of time invisibly washed over it, the dull body finally began to decline. On the surface of the dull body, the flesh and blood began to wither. In the end, countless pieces of flesh and blood were peeled off from the body like colorful python scales under the first tide of time. When they left, they turned into dust and scattered into ashes. In less than an instant, the flesh and blood of the python had been completely obliterated, and a large amount of bones and internal organs were revealed. Even though it hadn't been completely obliterated by the corrosion of the second tide of time, its aura had weakened to the extreme. If one suddenly glanced at it, it would seem like an aged giant that had experienced the decay of time. It was like a python that had one foot in the grave and was on its last breath. At that moment, the second tide of time had completely disappeared. The countless alloy cosmic garbage floating in the void behind the colorful serpent disappeared under the erosion of the invisible power of time of the first tide, turning into ashes. More than half of the more than 200,000 battleships, fortresses, and fortresses of various types had been completely annihilated and disappeared in only 2 waves of time tides. The remaining 100,000 battleships were spared because the void of the universe where they were floating happened to be on both sides of the huge fan-shaped area, so they were not destroyed by the 2 waves of time tides. They were enveloped by the tides and weren't eroded by the invisible power of time. Chapter 3643. Time had tides, and each tide lasted 10,000 years. It was a horrifying scene. In this vast void shrouded by the golden fan, 20,000 years of time had passed in the blink of an eye. The hundreds of thousands of warships, fortresses, and fortresses abandoned by the coalition army of the second universe were eroded by the merciless power of time and disintegrated in the blink of an eye. In the end, even the countless alloy remnants that were floating in midair after the 100,000 warships were dismantled were obliterated. The terrifying Star Lord of the colorful Python clan, on the other hand, had been in the prime of his life. He could have lived for more than 20,000 years as a Star Lord. But now, in the short span of 2 breaths, 20,000 years had passed by in the blink of an eye. Under normal circumstances, he would have been able to advance from the 16th realm, the Star Lord realm, to the 17th, or even the 18th, the Master realm, after 20,000 years. By then, his lifespan would have increased too. If he were a realm lord, his lifespan would have been 100,000 years. He would have been able to survive such a terrifying tide of time. But now, 20,000 years had passed in the blink of an eye. To this 100,000 feet long python, it had endured 20,000 years of merciless erosion in less than 2 breaths of time. However, it had passed through these 20,000 years in vain, and its cultivation base had not increased in the slightest. Hence, the calamity of the tide of time this time. Therefore, this tide of time was destined to fail. Because the last wave, which was also the 3rd wave of the golden tide, was already rumbling towards them without stopping at all, faced with the coming tide of time, the colorful Python clan, who was already at the end of its life, didn't even have the ability to roar at the sky like it did before the second tide of time arrived. It was dying, and could only wait to die. However, in its huge but already muddy eyes, there was clearly a strong sense of unwillingness and resentment. This 3rd tide of time was not complete. Even he could clearly feel that perhaps its power could not reach the level of 10,000 years per tide. At most, it could only bring about the instantaneous passage of 7,000 to 8,000 years. This was a fact. It was related to the tens of millions of golden slimes that served as the energy source of the time warp, as well as the purple gold slime that controlled the time warp in the core of the beehive node. Even if they gave it their all, they would only be able to form 3 tides of time at most. Moreover, the 3rd tide of time was incomplete and had yet to be completely formed. On the other hand, if all the golden slimes were to improve by a level, the purple gold slime king would be able to reach the Star Lord state or even the region Lord state from the current Cosmos state. In that case, the full power of this war of time would be even more powerful. Each tide of time was equivalent to 10,000 years. 6 or 7 tides of time could be unleashed consecutively. Or perhaps the power of each tide represented more than 10,000 years of merciless passing. All of these were possible. And now, there were exactly 3 waves of this tide. The final wave was still incomplete. However, it was meaningless. In fact, it was precisely because of this that the unwillingness in the python's heart grew even stronger and stronger. It was because it had less than 10,000 years left in its life. Too much of its vitality had been lost under the erosion of the previous 2 tides of time. His remaining lifespan could only last for another 5,000 to 6,000 years at most. Even if the power of this tide of time was incomplete and couldn't reach the last tide of time of 10,000 years, it would still be able to kill it. After 3 breaths of time had passed, the 3rd tide of time had finally arrived. Visible golden ripples turned into merciless ripples of time that spread out from the narrow corner of the enormous fan that enveloped that corner of the void. Soon, it covered the entire body of the python. Its enormous body had already been reduced to bones and scales, with less than 40% of its flesh and blood remaining. Its entire body was like a ragged bag full of scars. Through the decaying flesh and blood wounds, one could clearly see that a lot of its internal organs had also withered. At that moment, with the arrival of the 3rd tide of time, the merciless erosion of time reappeared. The python's entire body was visibly gray. Before the tide of time completely washed over it, there was no more flesh and blood left on its body. Even its internal organs fell out from its bones. They fell out of the gaps between its joints and turned into ashes after leaving the body. In just half a breath's time, all that could be seen in the void was an incomparably huge white skeleton. The colorful serpent, which had been a terrifying Star Lord, had completely perished. However, that wasn't the end of it. Even though the 3rd wave of the tide of time wasn't complete, it still hadn't completely faded away. Even though the python had perished, the golden ripples of time were still like ripples that mercilessly washed over the white skeleton that lay across space. In the blink of an eye, the enormous skeleton of the python had turned into countless white powders, as if it had been completely weathered, scattering into the void and disappearing in the end. This scene didn't stop there. As the final bit of the 3rd tide of time's merciless corrosive force gradually came to an end, the corrosion of the 30,000-meter-long skeleton started from the enormous white skull of the python and extended all the way to its tail. The process also lasted less than half a breath. When it finally came to an abrupt end, the golden ripples that were like tides in the enormous fan had completely disappeared. Only less than a third of the massive colorful python's skeletal structure remained in midair. Just like that, it abruptly floated in the void without making a single sound. At first glance, it was clearly a skeleton that was so old that it didn't even have the slightest trace of decay left. Whoever had left it behind had been dead for at least 10,000 years. Even its remains had been completely eroded by the cosmic rays and the merciless passage of time. All of this took a long time to describe. In the void of the golden fan-shaped region that had just disappeared, nearly 30,000 years of merciless time had eerily passed by just a moment ago. But in truth, for all the powerful individuals in the universe who had witnessed everything in the space around the golden fan-shaped region, only 3 breaths had passed since the battle began. 3 seconds. More than 100,000 warships of various types had been annihilated. 3 seconds. An old monster of the colorful Python clan who was a Star Lord had perished. Chapter 3644. Amongst the 3 great war drums, the power of the Time War drum was indeed the most terrifying. With a single strike, even the Star Lord old monster couldn't withstand it and directly fell. In the end, only a small piece of bone was left behind in the terrifying bloodline true body. Even Yi Xian was extremely satisfied with such an effect. That was because the Star Lord's body was extremely strong. If it had been another Star Lord, they might have died even faster and more miserably. It was quite possible that not even a hair would have been left behind. The only thing that he regretted was the hundreds of thousands of warships, fortresses that had been buried with him. Previously, the army of the Second Universe had left almost 250,000 warships behind when they hurriedly retreated after the War Claw's all-out attack. However, only 112,000 of them were left at the moment. The rest had all been turned into ashes and disappeared without a trace under the merciless erosion of the golden ripples of time in the fan-shaped area. That's too wasteful. At the same time that Yi Xian was extremely satisfied, his heart also faintly throbbed in pain. Even if the demon cultivator didn't want them, he could think of a way to keep them and hand them over to Triumph City in the future. Even though Triumph City was now like a paradise, undisturbed by anyone and enjoying the peace of the Death Star field, it was quietly developing at a rapid pace. Even though there were countless stars in the entire star field that could be used as stars to mine resources, they had to refine these resources into starship alloys, and then turn these starship alloys into more than 100,000 warships of various types also required energy and time. However, just now, Yi Xian had turned more than 100,000 warships into bubbles in less than 3 breaths. If Naples were there, he would probably beat his chest and stamp his feet. Shaking his head with a bitter smile, Yi Xian secretly reminded himself that he had to take some time to study the controllability of the 3 war claws. Otherwise, if he used such a full-strength attack every time, not only would the kinetic force suffer too many casualties, but the range of the target could also be controlled. Even the range and target of the power couldn't be precisely controlled. Either it didn't make a move, but once it did, it would directly envelop a large fan-shaped area and crush everything indiscriminately. This made people speechless. With that in mind, Yi Xian immediately extended his mental power after the colored Python clan Star Lord Old Monster had perished. He checked the state of the time warp's thousands of beehive nodes. It would have been fine if he didn't look, but once he did, he was so shocked that he almost vomited blood on the spot. Previously, when the Weeping Soul battle arrow had attacked with all its might, less than 100,000 of the 40 million Weeping Soul beasts had perished. But even so, Yi Xian's heart ached. But now, after the Time Warcry's attack, nearly 5 million of the 50 million golden slimes in the thousands of beehive nodes had perished. The casualty ratio had reached 10%, which was 100% of the Weeping Soul battle llamas. This was 50 times the casualty ratio of the Weeping Soul battle llamas. Moreover, the remaining 40 million golden slimes were all extremely dispirited at this moment. Clearly, like the tens of millions of Weeping Soul beasts in the Weeping Soul battle army, they needed to rest for a period of time before they could fight again. Fortunately, the golden slimes were different from the Weeping Soul beasts, which couldn't be replenished. The Weeping Soul beasts still had a slime mother nest that could continuously produce new members. The 5 million golden slimes lost in this battle could be replenished from the mother nest soon. But a casualty ratio of 10% was indeed too high. Even if the mother nest could withstand it, how could Yi Xian not feel pained? It seemed that this problem was very serious. When he returned, he had to take some time to study it properly. He had to make sure that the power and range of the 3 battle armies' attacks were completely controllable. Otherwise, if he had to bear such a huge casualty after using it once, Yi Xian felt that even if his nerves were strong, he wouldn't be able to withstand it if he used it a few more times. He would definitely suffer from a heartache. Previously, Yi Xian felt that it was a little strange that a Star Lord Old Monster had been so easily killed by him. If he said that he didn't feel the slightest bit of pity, that would definitely be a lie. But now, when he thought about how 5 million golden slimes had been buried with that old guy, the faint pity in his heart instantly disappeared without a trace. On the contrary, he was gnashing his teeth. That old guy had really profited too much. He had actually taken 5 million golden slimes to be buried with him. Yi Xian simply wished that he could pull him back and ruthlessly torture him again. After sighing for a while, his attention quickly returned to the void battlefield in front of him. At this time, after a short period of deathly silence caused by the shock in the hearts of the 3 great forces around the battlefield, it had long since become a boiling cauldron of voices again. Countless shocked cries rose and fell one after another, resounding without end. The 2 defense lines inside and outside the 3 stars of the Devil Emperor behind the 3 battle army were fine, but the coalition army of the slaves of the First Universe behind the 3 stars of the Devil Emperor, and the coalition army of the Second Universe, which only had 500,000 warships left, were all exclaiming and roaring furiously. Too many people were talking. Who? Damn it. Who are you exactly? How dare you slay a Star-Lord elder of my colored python clan? My clan will not rest until you're dead. Who? Oh my God. Was all of this real? A Star-Lord has completely perished? It's so horrifying. It's only been 3 seconds, and before everybody realized it, a Star-Lord colorful python has been completely obliterated, leaving only a small piece of bone behind. Is this the power of the laws of time? It's so horrifying. It's unbelievable. It's truly unbelievable. These 3 weapons of mass destruction are simply nightmares. One of them can trigger a spiritual storm, shatter the void of the universe, and create a turbulent void vortex. The other one can unleash a roar that doesn't deal any physical damage, but can instantly annihilate countless experts of the second universe who are below the Genesis state. The last one is even more unbelievable. It can even trigger the horrifying power of the laws of time in the universe and create a tide of time. Even a Star-Lord couldn't resist it and perished after only 3 seconds. With these 3 starry sky great killing weapons, who can destroy the devil race? Right, there's a more critical question. Does it have anything to do with the Heavenly Legacy clan? Are those 3 weapons of mass destruction the work of the demons, or is the Heavenly Legacy clan involved in it? If it's the latter, doesn't it mean that the Heavenly Legacy clan's technology has reached the level of the laws of time in the universe? That's so shocking. It's the real black technology of space. Chapter 3645. The 3 weapons of mass destruction had intimidated everyone present. Since there was the battle of time that targeted existences like the great powers of the universe and the old monsters of the Star-Lord realm, there was also the Weeping Soul battle of time that targeted the general level of starry sky experts below the 13th great realm, the Genesis realm. It was definitely significant. Whether it was the Heavenly Legacy race or the demon race that controlled the 3 terrifying battle garrisons had become the question that the leaders of all the races in the camp were most concerned about. Moreover, the question was extremely sensitive. It had a significant and far-reaching impact on the overall situation of the first universe and even the overall situation of the 3 universes. Yi Xian had also thought of this question. In fact, he was considering it at the moment. After the Star-Lord of the Colored Python race died, the coalition army of the second universe in the void battlefield had stopped fighting. The coalition army still had more than 500,000 battleships, fortresses, and even 8 Star-Lords. However, the Weeping Soul War and the Battle of Time had been too intimidating. They didn't dare to act rashly anymore. Only the heavens knew if these 2 terrifying weapons of mass destruction had the ability to unleash another attack of the same level. If the answer was yes, wouldn't they be asking for trouble? No matter if they sent out a large number of battleships or Star-Lords, the end result would be miserable. Even if the 2 battle garrisons only had the power to launch one attack and couldn't launch the same attack again in a short time, there were still 3 battle garrisons in the void. The last one hadn't been used yet. Of course, the battle garrisons in the void couldn't be used even if they wanted to. Yi Xian only used it to make up the numbers. 3 battle garrisons were always more intimidating than 2. However, apart from him, even the leaders of the demon race didn't know about this. Therefore, the deterrence of the 3 battle garrisons was still there. The coalition army of the second universe could only gather the last 500,000 battleships and retreat first. Before the main force of the second universe arrived or found a way to deal with the 3 weapons of mass destruction, the second wave of attacks could only be delayed indefinitely. They didn't even have time to send the experts of their race to take away the last remaining 100,000 battleships, fortresses in the void battlefield. If the 3 battle garrisons launched another attack during this process, wouldn't it be the same as sending countless people to their deaths for nothing? In a short time, the remaining 500,000 battleships, fortresses of the coalition army of the second universe had retreated to tens of millions of miles away. This distance was beyond the range of the main cannons of the fortresses. Even if the Star-Lords suddenly launched a sneak attack, they couldn't arrive instantly at such a long distance. In other words, the threat of the Second Universe Coalition Army of the Second Universe. Yi Xian's gaze swept across the space in front of him and fell into deep thought when it landed on the 110,000 or so battleships. According to his temper, Yi Xian would definitely not let go of the 110,000 battleships, fortresses, and fortresses. He would definitely find a way to collect them all and hand them over to Naples. Presumably, the overall strength of Triumph's city would increase by a large margin. However, this matter could only be thought about. Under the watchful eyes of so many people, it was really inconvenient for him to do so. Besides, there were more than 100,000 battleships spread out in the void. Although Yi Xian could collect them into his undying world, it would definitely take a lot of effort. His cultivation was still too weak. With a wave of his hand, he couldn't collect thousands of battleships at the same time. If he took out the Shenong cauldron and sent the experts of the demon race into the space inside the cauldron one by one, it would save a lot of effort. However, that was obviously even more impossible. He would directly expose his identity. After weighing the pros and cons, Yi Xian could only give up helplessly. The demon race was now facing enemies from the front and back. It was time for them to need a large number of battleships. As an ally, Yi Xian was really embarrassed to take away more than 100,000 battleships urgently needed at this juncture. What's more, they had given him a void battleship for free before. Thinking like this, Yi Xian quickly completely gave up the idea of taking more than 100,000 battleships. After pondering for a while, he changed his appearance into a middle-aged man with a curly beard in his 30s. Then, he stepped out of the time battleship and appeared in the void of the outside world. In the next moment, hundreds of millions of eyes gathered at the same time. At this moment, he was being watched by thousands of people at the same time. Whether it was the Second Universe's Coalition Army, the First Universe's Coalition Army, or even the demon race's royal families Mo Qigong, Mo Wentian, Grandpa Mo, and others, they were all nervous about what kind of existence the expert who brought these 3 battleships was. At this moment, when someone walked out of the time battleship, all the experts' heartstrings instantly tightened. Immediately after, an extremely unfamiliar face that no one had ever seen before appeared in their line of sight. The upper echelons of the major forces were subconsciously stunned at the same time, and then all kinds of different thoughts surged in their minds. Especially the demon race's royal family's upper echelons Mo Qigong, Mo Wentian, and Grandpa Mo. After being stunned for a moment, their originally tense heartstrings instantly relaxed by more than half. This was because this unfamiliar starry sky expert was clearly made of flesh and blood, and his cultivation was also at the first level of the void realm. Since he was made of flesh and blood, then it was absolutely impossible for him to be a certain upper echelon of the Tianji clan. Moreover, Prince Xian's cultivation was at the 7th level of the mystic light realm, which was the 11th level of the void realm. The difference between him and this unfamiliar expert who was at the first level of the void realm was not big. There was only a difference of 3 small levels. With that kid's monstrous talent, it wasn't entirely impossible for him to advance 3 small stages in such a freakish manner after more than half of the time had passed. It was not like it had never happened before. Furthermore, the time battleship was in his hands, so his identity was basically confirmed. There was a 99% chance that he was Prince Xian. At this moment, after stepping out of the time battleship and arriving in the void outside, Yi Xian immediately waved his hand, and in the blink of an eye, the 3 great killing weapons in the void in front of him were all stored in the undying world within his body. Seeing this scene, the eyes of the few upper echelons of the demon race who knew his identity and the secret alliance between him and the demon race immediately lit up. Because this meant that it was very likely that there were no other experts in the 3 battleships, for example, the Tianji clan. In other words, although the origin of the other 2 battleships was mysterious and puzzling, at least one thing could be confirmed, and that was that this matter had nothing to do with the Tianji clan. Although the Tianji clan had the ability to build these 2 battleships in just half a month, Prince Xian clearly did not. Through other channels, he could have done this. This was enough. Chapter 3646. My royal brother, Mo Feng. In just 7 short words, not only did they determine Yi Xian's new identity and make him a member of the royal family of the demon cultivator race, They even helped him choose a name. Mo Qifeng, on the other hand, complemented each other with the might of the three great battles he had just unleashed, suppressing the entire void. Yi Xian was stunned for a moment, then laughed bitterly in his heart. Mo Wentian was obviously trying to tie his new identity to the demon race. Even if Yi Xian's true identity was revealed in the future, he would be branded with a close relationship with the demon race to a certain extent. Although this was more or less selfish, Yi Xian didn't care. After all, his identity as Prince Xian was also fake. Wasn't he still tied to the same chariot as the immortal dynasty on the surface? To be honest, if the immortal dynasty and the demon race were to be compared, Yi Xian actually received more benefits from the demon race than the immortal dynasty. If it wasn't for the Black Mosquito tribe's sage trial, which allowed Yi Xian to enter the demon race's forbidden area, which was the desolate ancient cage mystery realm, Yi Xian basically wouldn't exist today. Even if he had other opportunities, the height of his growth and the various foundations in his hands would definitely be far inferior to what he had now. From this point of view, now that he was following the Demon Emperor Mo Wentian's intentions and tying this new identity to the demon race's chariot, it was actually just returning the favor. Besides, the situation in the first universe was chaotic now. As long as the Tianji clan didn't reveal the secret of his true identity, Yi Xian wouldn't easily return to Triumph City in the Death Starfield, so as to avoid bringing back the chaos and trouble outside. Then, in the situation where the identities of young Master Linghu, young Master Yuming, and Baofeng Sha couldn't be used temporarily, Yi Xian would rather stay here as a member of the demon race's royal family than casually change his identity. This way, it would be more convenient for him to carry out the follow-up arrangements and deal with some matters. Thinking like this, Yi Xian immediately smiled faintly. He did not say anything else, but across the void, he cupped his fists towards Mo Wentian and the other high-level members of the demon royal family who were standing in the void outside the atmosphere of the demon imperial star. This was clearly a tacit agreement. It meant that Yi Xian had acknowledged the words of the Devil King Mo Wentian, and acknowledged the identity of the upper echelon of the Devil People imperial family, Mo Jinfeng. The few upper echelons of the Devil Dwellers all secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Then, the Devil Emperor Mo Wentian raised his head and laughed again. He waved at Yi Xian from afar and called out intimately, "Brother, you've worked hard. Come quickly." Then he waved his hand and shouted in a deep voice, "Check the order. Immediately lead a fleet to bring back all the spoils of war. In this battle, Brother Jinfeng has made a great contribution. Pass down the order. Tonight, I will reward the entire clan. The entire Devil Imperial City will celebrate all night." Soon, a fleet sailed out from the inner defense line of the Devil Emperor 3 stars and rushed to the void battlefield ahead. This fleet had a large number of Devil Dweller experts. They would enter the more than 100,000 ghost ships that were quietly hovering in the void battlefield and drive them back to the Devil Emperor 3 stars. Then, after cleaning up the corpses of the experts of the second universe who had already died, these more than 100,000 battleships would become the battleships of the Devil Dweller race. The Devil Dweller experts would enter and gallop on the star battlefield. Of course, before officially entering the battle, these more than 100,000 battleships of various types would obviously undergo a certain degree of modification. At least the center of the star brain needed to be dealt with. Otherwise, once the signal receiving function of the external star network was turned on, it was very likely that it would be remotely controlled by the allied forces of the second universe. Invasion and control. At the same time, when Yi Xian heard the Devil Emperor Mo Wentian mention Chanas, his face was obviously slightly stunned. Then, as if thinking of something, he subconsciously looked at the Expeller, the flagship fortress of the Heavenly Fate clan's vanguard fleet, which had retreated to the outer defense line of the Devil Emperor 3 stars. Not only did Sha Baofeng surrender to the Devil Dweller race, but even Chanas had returned to the Devil Imperial City. Calculating the time, although his injuries were basically healed, after all, it was the wrath of a Star Lord. No matter how fast he recovered in half a month, it was impossible for him to be able to enter the battlefield so quickly, right? Yi Xian felt that there was something fishy about this matter, but he couldn't figure it out at all. At the moment, he could only secretly pay attention to it and put it aside for the time being. Then, his figure soared forward and crossed the void. Soon, he arrived at the void outside the atmosphere of the Devil Imperial planet and landed in front of the upper echelons of the Devil Dweller royal family. Except for the dozens of Devil Dweller royal uncles that he had just rescued from the Imperial prison of the Heavenly Fate Inner City, Mo Qigong, Devil Emperor Mo Wentian, and the others, the upper echelons of the Devil Dweller royal family standing behind were all confused. They didn't know about the secret alliance between the Devil Dweller race and Prince Xian, so it was naturally impossible for them to guess the true identity of this Mo Jinfeng standing in front of them. Unfortunately, there was no such person in the Devil Dweller royal family, and at this time, they couldn't ask, which was really difficult for them. Their minds were full of water on one side and flour on the other. Just a little bit of thinking, and their minds were immediately filled with paste. With the arrival of Yi Xian, the gazes of great-grandfather Mo Qigong, Devil Emperor Mo Wentian, and the others all gathered. Although they didn't say anything, the exchange of glances was enough. They smiled faintly and nodded to each other as a greeting. Find a place to deal with the corpses of the Second Universe's experts in the Devil Imperial planet later. I have some use for them, Yi Xian nodded. As he spoke, he paused for a moment, then continued, the valley from last time is good. It's quiet enough, and it's hidden enough. These words were said in a low voice. Only great-grandfather Mo Qigong, and the Devil Emperor Mo Wentian could hear them. The latter didn't think much and immediately nodded in agreement. The reason why Yi Xian needed the corpses of the Second Universe's experts was to let his battle weapon, the withered demon blood blade, have a feast of flesh and blood. This would be very beneficial to the withered demon blood blade that had fallen into a deep sleep and was in the process of evolving. Although they were all experts of the Second Universe's various races below the Genesis realm, their cultivation wasn't very strong, and before their souls were extinguished and they died, they didn't activate their bloodline true bodies, so the amount of qi and blood in the corpses was limited. But after all, there was enough of them. Chapter 3647. What? The younger brother of the Devil Emperor, Mo Jinfeng? Who has heard of this person? The demon race is indeed worthy of being one of the top 3 slave races in the first universe. The water is too deep. I didn't expect such a monstrous member of the royal family to be hidden in the race. He has been hidden away to study the great killing weapon of war. Even at the end of the first battle in the Starry Sky battle in the frontier of the demon race, when the first great killing weapon was born, this Mo Jinfeng was not exposed. Until now, the 3 great battle weapons of the demon race have moved out in full force and ruthlessly defeated the coalition army of the Second Universe. Only then did he finally reveal his level. This is really King good at enduring. Move out in full force? I'm afraid not, right? Who can guarantee that the demon race really only has 3 battle weapons? When only 1 battle weapon appeared before, I'm afraid no one thought that the demon race actually has 3 of such terrifying Starry Sky killing weapons, right? Yes, they can take out 3, why can't they take out more? We are in big trouble. This is a supreme killing weapon that can even kill the Star Lord Old Monster. If there are 8 or 10 of them, even though the first universe is big, except for the Tianji clan, which clan can suppress the demon race? And all of this is done by Mo Jinfeng. I didn't expect that after Sha Baofeng of the Tianji clan, the demon race actually has a peerless monstrous talent who can compete with Prince Xian, Invincible War God, Young Master Linghu, and Young Master Yuming. His name is Mo Jinfeng, and his momentum is inexplicable. Yes, he can create such a great killing weapon like the Starry Sky battle weapon, and casually take out 3 of them. The power is completely different. Each has its own focus, but they are all terrifying. With such talent, this Mo Jinfeng can definitely be the 6th supreme monstrous talent in this world. The demon race is about to rise. As Demon Emperor Mo Wentian's words of, my royal brother Mo Jinfeng, spread out, Yi Xian did not deny it, but acquiesced. He smiled and cupped his hands to Demon Emperor Mo Wentian and other senior members of the demon race across the void. The coalition army of the first universe was in an uproar again. At this moment, in the enormous coalition army that had more than 1 million warships, fortresses, the leaders of the fleets of the slave clans all felt their hearts sink to rock bottom. Regardless of whether or not the demon humans race had truly colluded with the Tianji race, the appearance of these 3 star wars was enough to show the terrifying strength of the demon humans race. Although the alliance army of the slave races in the first universe was very powerful and had millions of battleships, in the face of the 3 terrifying space battles, the higher-ups of the fleet commanders of the slave races all felt a chill in their hearts without exception. They felt powerless to resist. Compared to the second universe's alliance army, which took the initiative to start this plane-level star war and joined forces to invade, the first universe's alliance army formed a huge alliance army of 1,000,000 battleships to jointly suppress the demon race. However, in fact, this alliance army didn't have much cohesion at all. Although it didn't become a mob, it wasn't much better. If the demon race was weak, it wouldn't be a big deal. However, once the demon race showed that they could threaten the entire alliance army, even if they only had the overall strength to injure both sides, the possibility of this so-called alliance army quickly collapsing from the inside was at least more than 70%. And now, even the cohesive force of the second universe's various races had been scared off by the demon race's appearance in the 3 starry skies. How much trouble could this subjugation force of the first universe's various races, which was no better than a motley crew, cause? Not only did Yi Xian, Grandpa Mo, Elder Mo, Demon King Mo Wendian, and the other higher-ups of the royal family of the demon race knew this, but so did the commanders of the fleets of the slave races in the first universe. When Yi Xian leaped up and headed toward the demon King Mo Wendian and the others, at the same time, in the inner defense line of the 3 stars of the Demon Emperor, the receiving fleet led by the commander of the Demon Emperor Guards, Chanas, also sailed out and rushed to the void battlefield ahead. Thousands of miles away from the demonic Emperor 3 stars in the void, within the millions of slaves of the first universe who were watching the battle from afar, the commanders and higher-ups of the fleets of various races were all ready to make a move. All of them wanted to leave. It was just that no clan had the nerve to be the first to leave. For a while, the first fleet that took the lead to leave had not appeared yet. However, when Yi Xian and the other higher-ups of the royal family of the demon race all turned their heads and looked at them, their eyes were filled with strong hostility. The commanders of the fleets of the various clans suddenly trembled, and an extremely bad premonition arose in their hearts. Although they were more than 1,000 miles away from the 3 stars of the Demon Emperor, for Mo Jinfeng, who was in the 12th realm of the Void Realm, it was just a short distance that he could cover with a few teleportations at most. They were not afraid of the starship army of the demon race. After all, the allied fleets of the slave races had more than 1,000,000 battleships, fortresses, and fortresses of various types in total. But for the 3 space battleships in the hands of Mo Jinfeng, the commanders of the slave races, without exception, were all very afraid of them. Once that guy performed the void teleportation, came close to them in the blink of an eye, and then launched the 3 powerful battleships at the same time. Something big was definitely going to happen. As a matter of fact, he did not need to go through so much trouble at all, because it had been proven that once the 3 space battleships were activated, the fan-shaped area in front of the enormous mouth of the 300,000 meters wide within the range of the power of the battleships could cover almost 1,000 miles at most. In other words, Mo Jinfeng, the royal brother of the demon race, did not need to perform the void teleportation at all. He could launch the 3 space battleships from 1,000 miles away and immediately crush them as soon as possible. If he performed the void teleportation once to advance 200 or 300 kilometers in order to ensure the lethality, and then launched the battleships to launch the bombardment, it would be even more perfect. With the scale of 1,000,000 battleships of the Allied army, it was impossible for them to evacuate completely in an instant. If the 3 space battleships were launched at the same time, at least half of the Allied army of 1,000,000 battleships would be lost here. The casualties would be heavy, and rivers of blood would be shed. Chapter 36-48. The 3 known universes all had vast territories. Even in the 3rd universe, which was occupied by the human race, there were other non-human races living there. However, they were all weak and dependent on the human race. They kept a low profile, so they rarely showed themselves. The 1st and 2nd universes had many races. The overlord of the 1st universe was the Heavenly Legacy race, and it was said that there were tens of thousands of slaves under its command. This was naturally an exaggeration, but in fact, in the first universe, there were more than 1,000 races. Because all the races in the first universe were under the command of the Heavenly Legacy race, they were mercilessly enslaved by the Heavenly Legacy race. Therefore, even though there were more than 1,000 races in the first universe, there was no so-called top 10 like the races in the second universe's federation. However, among the servant clans of the first universe, there was a publicly recognized saying that they were in the top 3. That was to say, among the slave races, the overall strength of the race was ranked in the top 3. Of course, this was talking about the overall strength of the race, not the individual combat strength or bloodline talent of the race. The entire first universe was ruled by the Heavenly Legacy race. They were the overlords. The other races, even if their individual talent and combat strength were very strong, could only keep a low profile. Among the slave races in the first universe, among the 3 races that were recognized as the top 3, other than the demon race known as the Heavenly Legacy Scouts, the other 2 races were the Space Rats and the Hell Ants. These 2 clans didn't sound like they were worth mentioning. They were either rats or ants, but in fact, the continuation of their clans had quite a history. It was said that the bloodline of the Space Rat originated from the Void Rat of the Primordial Era. Just by hearing this name, one could basically guess the power of its bloodline talent. That's right. The Void Rats were born with a certain amount of space law in the universe. Their bodies were the most perfect treasures to break through realms. Not only could they perfectly hide their bodies in the void of the universe, but neither secret realms nor barriers in some small independent spaces could block their bodies. As for the so-called sealing array, it was even more of a joke. This was definitely far more terrifying than the sealing power of the barrier-breaking boots. There was even a saying that when the Void Rats grew to a certain extent, they could even ignore the planar barriers between the planes of the greater universe. This was terrifying. It meant that planar space travel no longer required wormholes to be carried out. This kind of technology was something that even the Heaven's Legacy race would not be able to do. Until now, he had never mastered it. However, Yi Xian's devouring system's ability to jump interplanar coordinates seemed to be similar to this, or even more powerful. From this perspective, Xing Bo, the human technological pioneer who created the devouring system, was simply an unparalleled genius. The more Yi Xian learned about the system, the more respect he had for it. This was because he increasingly realized how terrifying and incomprehensible the devouring system was. The blood descendant of Space Rat, was one of the top 3 slave races in the second universe. It was not because Space Rat was strong, but because of other reasons. On one hand, this was because this race was simply too powerful in terms of reproduction, and on the other hand, the Heaven's Legacy race valued this race far more than the other slave races. Although the Space Rats only had a small amount of extremely thin Space Rat bloodline, the Heaven's Legacy race had never stopped researching this race's bloodline talents. It was said that the Heaven's Legacy race had successfully cultivated a Space Rat with a highly atavistic bloodline nearly 10,000 years ago. Although it could not be called a Space Rat yet, it was not too far away. Later on, it was through in-depth research on this quasi-void rat that the upper echelons of the Heaven's Legacy race were inspired and finally invented the space-folding technology. Besides the Space Rat, the Hell Ant also had a great background. It was said that the bloodline source of the Hell discussion was the Nether Ant from the Primordial Era. The Nether Ant was the same as the Void Rat. They belonged to a mysterious race from the Primordial Era and had long gone extinct in the current world. It was said that the real underworld ants were completely immortal and indestructible. Of course, this was a relative statement, referring to the fact that conventional methods and means could no longer threaten their existence. However, all things in the world had their mutual promotion and suppression. Since the underworld ants had already disappeared from the world, there was no trace of them. It was suspected that it had long gone extinct. Then, in the Primordial Era, there must have been a creature that was its natural enemy. The Nether Ant was said to live in the legendary Nether Prison. Its entire body was covered in black flames. As for the Hell Ant, although it was not like the source of its bloodline, its entire body was steaming with terrifying black underworld flames. However, the hell ant's body was able to secrete a black liquid. This liquid was incomparably cold and had no temperature. However, even the hardest void indestructible metal could not withstand this liquid. The corrosion of the hell ant's liquid. After a long time, it would definitely be corroded and penetrated. From this point of view, Yi Xian's indestructible glass armor could not withstand the bites of the hell ant. It should be known that even the void-swallowing beast, which was known as the void soldier ladle, could not bite through the void indestructible gold. However, if Yi Xian's indestructible glass armor, which was mixed with a piece of void indestructible gold, encountered a large group of hell ants, the result would most likely be a group of ants devouring an elephant after a long time. In the end, it would still be a tragedy. The reason why the hell ant could become one of the top 3 slave races in the second universe was similar to the space rat. This race's reproduction ability was also terrifying and their numbers were too large. In the western territory of the second universe, there was a vast void called the Hell Ant Star Field. That was the ancestral land of the Hell Ant race. The entire Hell Ant Star Field was almost 3 times the size of the Demon Domain. Every star in it was inhabited by a large number of hell ants. This kind of life form had very low requirements for survival environment. Even if it was not a life planet, but an abandoned mineral star, they could still go to heaven and earth. Another reason why they could become one of the top 3 races was similar to the space rat. Their bloodline talent was extremely valued by the Tianji clan. The hell ant's body secreted a black liquid with terrifying corrosive power, the hell ant liquid. For the Tianji clan, it was a rare material that was indispensable in industrial construction because it could be used to decompose almost any hard metal. In addition, this hell ant liquid also had various other magical uses, including a very wonderful tempering effect on the bodies of the Tianji clan members. In fact, even in the 2 camps of the human clan in the third universe, the hell ant liquid secreted by the hell ant was a sacred body tempering product that was hard to find even with 10,000 gold. This was especially true for the Starry Sky Masters who walked the path of body tempering, as well as those top families who studied gene cultivation fluid. Chapter 3649. Boom! As Yi Xian's figure flashed, he directly performed void teleportation. His figure crossed 200 to 300 kilometers of the universe and appeared in the distant starry sky only 700 to 800 kilometers away from the First Universe's alliance army. The fleet commanders of the First Universe's slave clans, who were preparing to flee in a hurry, were shocked on the spot. They were scared out of their wits. Soon, Yi Xian's warning was heard. He said that if any battleship performed a space jump to leave, he wouldn't mind immediately ordering the 3 space warships to shoot at the same time. The fleet commanders of the slave clans were stunned on the spot. Previously, only the Weeping Soul warship and the Time warship had killed tens of millions of experts of the Second Universe, as well as a Star-Lord Old Monster of the colorful Python clan. If the 3 warships really fired at the same time and attacked together, it was estimated that even if their million-strong army was not wiped out, at least 70% of them would be killed or injured. Moreover, although the slave clans had basically sent out a fleet to suppress the demon race, the commanders of each fleet were all mighty figures of the universe. It wasn't that they didn't have existences at the level of the Star-Lord, but they wouldn't easily send them out. Facing the Time warship that could kill even the Star-Lord Old Monsters in seconds, these universe realm commanders of the various clans simply didn't have any confidence. Helplessly, the commanders of the slave clans immediately ordered all the battleships of the fleet under them to stop accumulating energy. Under such circumstances, they couldn't directly perform a space jump without a care. That way, at most, only the small group of battleships with the fastest jumping ability could survive. The rest would all be wiped out. However, this didn't mean that the slave clans really intended to give in. For the time being, they ordered all the fleets under them to stop jumping and accumulating energy. In their opinion, this was just a delaying tactic, or a deliberate move to confuse the enemy. The moment the order was issued, the fleet commanders of the various slave clans had already started a secret discussion through the internal encrypted frequency band. They all looked extremely angry and murderous, too arrogant. So what if he's the royal brother of the demon race? How dare he stop our million-strong army alone? He's just an ant with a cultivation base of only the 12th realm of the void. Who gave him such guts? How dare he shout at us, a group of mighty figures of the universe? A mighty figure of the nine-winged heavenly silkworm clan roared endlessly, seemingly furious. He seemed to have forgotten that not long ago, even a Star-Lord old monster of the colorful python clan couldn't last more than 3 breaths in the hands of the ant he was talking about. What can we do? Everyone saw the terrifying power of the 3 warships in his hands. Even Star-Lord old monsters couldn't withstand them. Are we supposed to attack him? That's the rhythm of the universe. A mighty figure of the universe of a weaker race replied. Was. As soon as he finished speaking, this statement received a response. Another similarly weak race, the supreme commander of its fleet, strongly supported. Now it seems that the demon race should not have colluded with the Heaven's legacy race. They have such a terrifying killing weapon in their hands, why would they need to collude with the Heaven's legacy race? In my opinion, the reason why Yi Luo's vanguard fleet appeared outside the defense line of the Demon Emperor 3 stars is most likely because they were detained. That's right. In the face of the 3 warships, Yi Luo's vanguard fleet only has a little more than 10,000 warships of various types. They can't raise a storm at all and can only admit defeat. Therefore, we can basically rule out the possibility of the demon race colluding with the Tianji clan. From the looks of it, our allied army's so-called crusade doesn't live up to its name. Another supreme commander of the universe spoke up. The first half of his sentence seemed to be in support of the side that had admitted defeat, but halfway through, his tone changed and he began to sneer. But the more it's like this, the more we can't let it go. Do you want to see a second heavenly legacy race appear in the first universe? The demon race. They want to take advantage of this opportunity to rise fully. Today, they brought out the long-hidden warships of the universe in a high-profile manner. This is irrefutable evidence. That's right. The Tianji clan's momentum is gone. As long as we and the other slave races unite and resist together, they won't be able to do anything in a short time. It's impossible to let the first universe return to the situation where the Tianji clan dominated alone. 10,000 years of enslavement, the slave races. They have long been alert and united against a common enemy. But the demon race is different. They were the same as us before, a slave race of the Tianji clan. From a certain point of view, all the other races don't have a strong sense of hatred for the demon race like the Tianji clan. This is extremely dangerous. They have a chance to break through in one go. They will eventually replace the Tianji clan and become the second supreme overlord of the first universe. At that time, what awaits us is still the same fate of being mercilessly enslaved as in the past. We will never compromise. We will never accept enslavement again. The first universe is the first universe of all races. The situation of all races worshipping one side in the past tens of thousands of years will never happen again. The races of the first universe should blossom everywhere and achieve unity. That's right. Any race that has ambitions and wants to destroy the unity of the first universe should be firmly resisted by us. The demon race is not allowed, even if they have the 3 great war machines in their hands. Seconded. Seconded. If that's the case, then to fight or to make peace, let's raise our hands to vote. Soon, the results of the vote were out. More than 70% of the races decided to resist, and even the countermeasures had been put out. The only reason why the demon race's royal brother, Mo Jiufeng, was so tyrannical and arrogant was because of the terrifying power of the 3 great war machines in his hands. However, his own cultivation base was not strong. He was only at the first level of the Void Realm. As long as he could take advantage of the fact that he was unprepared to strike and kill him, the threat of the 3 great war machines would naturally disappear. He should not be able to make a timely and effective response in a short period of time. Perhaps he could take advantage of this opportunity to snatch the 3 great war machines in one go. Even if we can't use it, we can't destroy it. We can't let it fall into the hands of the demon race. And as long as there was no threat of these 3 great war machines, with the current scale of 1,000,000 battleships of the allied forces of the various races, the demon race only had less than 500,000 troops, and they could be suppressed in just one battle. In this way, the ambitious demon race, this big tumor, would be completely eradicated. Yes. Chapter 3650. Mo Jinfeng was standing alone in the void hundreds of kilometers away. Behind him, Grandpa Mo, who had reached the peak of the 9th rank of the Star-Lord state, had returned to the demonic Emperor planet and disappeared. There was no need for him to take action in such a situation. Yi Xian had level 8 mental power. He was completely confident in dealing with the coalition army of the slaves of the First Universe. Grandpa Mo and the other senior members of the royal family had also considered the possibility of the enemy sending a universe grand expert to assassinate him, but they weren't worried either. The most terrifying thing about Prince Xian wasn't the 3 space fortresses, but his own strength and methods. It wasn't as if no one had ever killed a universe realm expert or even a Star Lord. Since he dared to step forward so boldly, the others had nothing to worry about. Being overly nervous was a sign of distrust towards allies, which was a taboo. Therefore, apart from Grandpa Mo, all the other Star Lords, including Mo Wentian, hid themselves and retreated to the demonic Emperor planet. In the void behind them, only Mo Qigong and a few other upper echelons of the demon royal family were mobilizing their battleships and were about to arrive. They were arranged behind Yi Xian and the 3 battleships. Their purpose was only to strengthen their momentum. However, in the eyes of the supreme commander of the various races of the First Universe's coalition army, it was obviously another matter. In their opinion, this was the negligence of the demon race. They actually left the demon race's royal brother, who was only a rank 1 void space, alone in the void at the front of the battlefield. All of them. All the Star Lords left. Some of the universe grand experts were even infuriated, thinking that it was an insult to them. The demons were too arrogant. They had completely ignored the coalition army of millions of other races. However, there were also some people who were secretly delighted. They urged the space rats and the hell ants to immediately take action. They wanted to take advantage of the fact that the other side was unguarded to launch a thunderous attack. They wanted to kill Mo Jinfeng as soon as possible. As for the 3 starry skies, they would seize them if they could. If they couldn't, they would destroy them on the spot. To avoid future troubles, the assassination was immediately launched. The commander of the Hell Ants, Mighty Ant God, did not immediately rush to the battlefield. Instead, after concealing himself, he stepped out of the flagship fortress and hid nearby, not daring to get too close. Even the supreme expert of the universe would more or less cause some spatial fluctuations when they teleported through the void. The experts of the 12th Great Realm, the Void Realm, could already keenly capture this kind of weak fluctuating aura. Even if Mo Jinfeng couldn't avoid the close-range killing blow represented by teleportation in time, this place was too close to the Demon Emperor 3 stars, and still within the range of the Star Master's senses. Once Grandpa Mo and the other Star Lords sensed the space waves, they could arrive instantly and take action. Not only would the assassination fail, but it would also be tragic. Therefore, Mighty Ant had no choice but to hide in the void near the front of his own fleet. He was on full alert. If Mao Jin, the supreme expert of the space rats, succeeded in the assassination, he would not need to do anything. But if he failed, all he had to do was look at the situation and decide whether to try again and immediately rush over to give him the final blow. At the same time, the supreme expert of the space rats, Mao Jin, also concealed himself and left the flagship fortress of his fleet and entered the void. Although he was not a real void rat and had the terrifying ability to completely ignore the barriers of space and perfectly integrate himself into the void, he still had some of the void rat's inherited bloodline in his body, even though his cultivation was only at the 15th realm, the universe realm. However, so long as he utilized the energy within his body, activated his bloodline ability, and fused into space, then even a terrifying existence at the 9th rank of the Star-Lord realm at the peak of the 9th rank of the Star-Lord realm would absolutely be unable to capture the slightest spatial fluctuation that was related to his movements. Reality was indeed so. A few hundred kilometers away, Mao Jin's figure completely merged into the void and left no traces behind. Moreover, his speed was extremely fast, and in a short few breaths of time, he had already approached Yi Xian's side. Swish! There were no spatial fluctuations, and only a cold light flashed. A dark and cold light flashed from the void to the right of Yi Xian's figure and slashed towards his neck. This was clearly an attack that intended to behead him, and it was absolutely a strike of lightning. Even though Yi Xian had expected that his opponent would very likely use such a method to open up the situation and resolve the predicament, and he had even planned a method to deal with it in his heart, the assassination of the space rats was too sudden. This ghastly cold light had already arrived at the side of his neck, and Yi Xian's body even instinctively reacted to it, causing the hair on his back to stand on end, yet he still didn't sense any spatial fluctuation. Space rat? He really lives up to his reputation. A flash of inspiration flashed through Yi Xian's mind, and he immediately guessed the identity of his opponent. Just as he spoke, the space between his eyebrows suddenly burned, and an invisible beam of light shot out. In an instant, he saw a human-shaped Mao Jin in the void beside him. When the two parties' eyes met, the Mao Jin's sneaky eyes instantly widened, and the attack he was raising his claws towards Yi Xian's throat paused slightly. He cried out in shock, "How is this possible? You can actually see me?" This was naturally the power of Yi Xian's demon soul eye to see the source of the power. However, just seeing the other party was obviously useless. Although the demon soul eye was mysterious, and it was even said that when it reached a certain level, the light it emitted would have a mysterious soul-sucking effect. However, Yi Xian's demon soul eye had only evolved to the intermediate level, so the power it displayed was basically useless. It could only be considered a supportive effect, and it didn't have any killing power. However, almost at the same time that Mao Jin let out a soft cry, the spiritual source core in Yi Xian's mind that was suspended in his sea of consciousness started to operate at full speed. Spiritual reversal. At this moment, Yi Xian's eyes flickered, and he didn't hesitate to activate the spiritual power that had just been upgraded to the intermediate level not long ago. Soon, as the spiritual source core in his mind started to operate crazily, a majestic and mighty spiritual power instantly burst out. Level 8 spiritual power poured out like a tide without any form or substance, but it instantly spread out on the cold light that was slashing towards his neck. This cold light was the space rat's left claw, but at this moment, it was completely covered by this invisible spiritual power. In an instant, it affected the trajectory of its force field, forming a mysterious reversal effect. Poof! The cold light that was about to touch Yi Xian's neck suddenly retracted, and in the blink of an eye, it completely reversed and attacked Mao Jin, who was still crying out involuntarily. With a plop, his head was cut off, and it rolled into the void. After all, Yi Xian was an almighty figure. In this kind of close-range battle, it was true that he couldn't casually kill him with one strike. However, if he made a move, it would be a different story. Chapter 3651. Yi Xian was now the younger brother of the demon race, Mo Jinfeng, so he could use all kinds of mental power skills, secret arts, and divine abilities without any pressure. Even the mental lightning art that had been exposed in front of others was fine. There was no need to worry about exposing his identity. Back when he used the identity of young Master Linghu to use the mental lightning art, Gong Wuxin, Wu Chenzi, Chou Doufu, Yu Linglong, and the others in the farmer god cauldron, Gong Wuxin and the others suspected that the ability he used had something to do with the demon race's mental power. For warriors, there was simply no trace to follow. But after all, suspicions were only suspicions. Without conclusive evidence, those fellows feared young Master Linghu and didn't dare to speak carelessly. Otherwise, if young Master Linghu didn't fall, they would be doomed. And now, this was the devil domain. Although there weren't many devil cultivator experts who knew the spiritual lightning technique, and it could even be said that there were very few of them, it wasn't that there weren't any. As the devil emperor's younger brother, it was natural for Yi Xian to be able to use the spiritual lightning technique. As for the spiritual reversal, it was a kind of magical technique that belonged to the category of spiritual power. When it was used, it would only release a layer of spiritual light. Its power and profound meaning were not concrete, so it was very strange and unfathomable. Even though they were on the Demon Emperor planet, Grand Elder Mo and the other demon race's star lords had been paying close attention to the battlefield. When they saw Yi Xian use such a terrifying and unstoppable mental power ability, they couldn't help but be stunned. Then, they shook their heads and sighed. They stood up. They only knew that it was a mental power ability, but they didn't know its specific information, not even its name. There was no need to mention the experts of the other slave races other than the demon race. To them, this was simply unimaginable. The rat feather brocade was clearly about to succeed in its assassination. Not only did it silently close in for an attack, but the sharp claws that suddenly extended out from the void had already touched the target's neck. It only needed a light swipe, and a large head would fall into the void in an instant. Who would have thought that the final result would be so strange and shocking? The head did roll, but it wasn't the demon's younger brother Mo Jinfeng's head. It was the Space Rat Clan's almighty Rat Mao Jin's head. The old man seemed to have lost his mind. He was clearly about to succeed, but at the last critical moment, he took the initiative to reveal his figure. He even exclaimed softly. At the same time, he instantly retracted the sharp claws that he had stretched out. He circled his neck and directly cut off his own head. Come, this was King like seeing a ghost. A space rat Mao Jin's head, who was most proficient in stealth assassination, went to assassinate a void realm demon ant, and in the end, not only failed, but also lost his life. The crux of the matter was that it wasn't the other party who made the move. It was him who cut off his own head. Boom! The hell ant gods, head of the hell ant races, almighty god of the hell ant races of the hell. His figure appeared in an instant. His face was aghast as he exclaimed, "What kind of technique is this?" Lu Mao Jin cut his. This kid is strange. At the same time, the power in his body surged crazily, activating his bloodline talent. In the blink of an eye, a huge black hell ant over 100 feet in size appeared in the void. The ant god decided to take action, but he didn't plan to get close. Lu Mao Jin's death was too unjust. The other party clearly had a terrifying and strange technique, which was close to evil. No wonder he was so arrogant, daring to face 1,000,000 soldiers alone. This was the rhythm of not being afraid of assassination at all. Getting close was death. He decided to try one last time. From hundreds of miles away, he would release a large amount of hell ant liquid in his body, forming a hell liquid demon rain. At that time, as long as one drop could touch the other's body, it would be able to severely injure him, and he would not be able to avoid the following drops of hell ant liquid rain. The final result would be that his entire body would be corroded, melt, and then die. If this method couldn't do anything to the other party, it meant that today's matter couldn't be done. The ant god would retreat immediately. The hell ant fleet that he brought this time would leave if they could. If they couldn't, the worst-case scenario was that they would all be wiped out. He would teleport away first. The strange death of Lu Mao Jin was too shocking for him. An unprecedented sense of crisis shrouded his body and mind. He didn't want to follow in his footsteps. Whoosh! 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 Countless faint sounds of breaking through the air rang out. From the huge black hell ant's body, countless drops of black liquid shot out. Each drop was the size of a longan fruit. They were round and full, and their surface was suffused with a cold light. They covered the sky and earth, and in the blink of an eye, they formed a black rain. In less than half a breath, they had traversed hundreds of miles of the void and were falling towards the location of Yixian. A large area of the void with a radius of 1,000 feet was completely covered. At this moment, a strong sense of crisis rose in Yixian's heart. He had never come into contact with the hell ant before, so he didn't know anything about this race. Even if he casually looked up the basic information of the slave races of the second universe in the data library of the devouring system, he only knew that there was a race. This race existed. As for what this huge hell ant suddenly shot out like rain of liquid, Yixian had no idea. However, his intuition told him that he had to dodge. If he didn't, he was afraid that he would be in big trouble. However, the other party was, after all, a mighty figure of the universe. At this moment, the speed of this black liquid rain was too fast. Hundreds of thousands of drops of black liquid only covered a radius of 1,000 feet in the void. The density was too high. Even if Yixian used the void teleportation, it was too late. Just as he was about to wave his hand to summon a few defensive magic treasures to stall for a while and immediately activate the void teleportation ability, the 3 weeping soul battle towers behind him suddenly trembled violently at this moment. At the same time, there were countless weeping soul beast screams, which resounded in the weeping soul battle towers. It was chaotic, and it was extremely anxious. It seemed that it was extremely excited. Before Yi Xian could react to what had happened, a familiar system prompt suddenly sounded in his mind. Ding! Congratulations to the host. Discovered Hell Ant Liquid. Effect: Body Tempering Sacred Item. Based on the host's current cultivation, it must be refined and mixed before use. At the same time, this item solidifies the Weeping Soul Beast's soul. It has a special effect on the spiritual soul. It can promote its evolution and rapidly increase its life level. Grade: Secretion from the body of the Hell Ant of the universe, middle level Hell Ant Liquid. Quantity: 355,748 drops. Do you want to collect it immediately? Nanny? There was such a good thing. No wonder the Weeping Soul Beast palpitated like this. This thing was equivalent to the effect of the primary life crystal on the evil slime. It could actually rapidly increase its life level and solidify its spiritual soul. Chapter 3652. Since it was a good item, Yi Xian naturally wouldn't let it go. Although he only had a superficial understanding of the hellish ant liquid, with the brief explanation of the devouring system's notification, he more or less understood what it was. Generally speaking, heavenly treasures that were beneficial for body refinement were usually overbearing and powerful. This hellish ant liquid was probably the same. Since Yi Xian needed to be refined and mixed before he could use it with his current cultivation, it meant that it had a very strong corrosive effect. Once it came into contact with the body, it would definitely cause unimaginable damage. This should be the goal of the other party. And now, in a situation where he couldn't avoid it, the only thing Yi Xian could do was defend. But unless he used a primordial treasure like the Shenong Cauldron, normal defensive armors wouldn't be able to withstand it. Even Yi Xian's indestructible glass armor was extremely dangerous. After all, it was only a quasi-starry sky treasure. And this black rain formed by hundreds of thousands of drops of hellish ant liquid was not only shot by the almighty Qian Kun, but also had a very strong corrosive effect on its own. According to Yi Xian's estimation, it would require at least an ancient treasure to withstand the combination of the powerful penetrating force and the corrosive effect. Even if the quasi-starry sky treasure indestructible glass armor could withstand it, the probability of it being destroyed on the spot was more than 80%. However, Yi Xian clearly had another choice. That was to neither dodge nor defend. He would just swallow it. Of course, he wouldn't swallow it himself. He would let the Weeping Soul Beast do it. The system's notification had made it very clear. With Yi Xian's cultivation, although he couldn't directly swallow the mid-grade hellish ant liquid secreted by the Qian Kun Hell Ant, the Weeping Soul Beast had no problem at all. The mutual promotion and suppression of all things in the world was originally very mysterious. Xiao. Just as the black rain of ant liquid was about to envelop his head and fall rapidly, it was less than 100 meters away from Yi Xian. Just as it was about to completely envelop him in the next moment, Yi Xian suddenly waved his hand and directly sent 10 bees through the miniature teleportation formation of the Weeping Soul Warlord behind him. All the Weeping Soul beasts in the nest were transferred to his surroundings. Screech. Screech. Ruthless. An earth-shattering and excited howl instantly sounded out. In this instant, Yi Xian's surroundings burst out in a chaotic manner. One by one, the Weeping Soul Beast, which was in a spiritual state and had an appearance similar to a monkey beast, only had a single horn on its head, and as soon as it appeared, it unhesitatingly charged towards the top of its head. The ant liquid rain was shooting towards them.